Vice Mayor Samaria,
Yeah.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Present.
Commissioner Himmelberg,
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Samaria, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Judy, shut off your microphone, please. No? What is it? Oh, okay. Are there any additions, deletions, or withdrawals to the agenda?
Yeah, I have a couple of things,
Commissioner Kennedy?
if you don't mind. I'd like to pull 9A, the FDOT resolution for discussion, please. Pull it off the consent agenda. Would anyone want to have a discussion about rearranging some of the things in this meeting? We have two big items on here, the land development code and the swales, and either of them could take up the remainder of the meeting when we get to them. So does anyone think we should maybe do some rearranging? And the other thing to point out, Judy, you can't see the room. Jonathan Groth from the foundation is here, and he's involved in one of the discussions that's all the way at the end of the meeting, and maybe we could try to pull that up so he doesn't have to stay all the way to the very end.
What was the one that you wanted to change to begin with?
9A,
That's on the consent agenda.
yes, pull it off consent.
You want to
Pull it off.
take it off? Does everybody agree? No? All right, are there any other additions, deletions?
So does anyone else want to think we should do some rearranging here?
Would suggest, if we can move Jonathan's topic up so that he doesn't have to sit here through all this boring stuff for the next 3 hours.
What number is that?
13A.
Okay.
Can we
It's a
put,
very important topic. It's about liquor.
yeah. Can we move new business ahead of old business? Are we allowed to do that? Yeah?
What?
Can we move a new business item up ahead of ordinances and resolutions and new business?
I have no idea.
Can we do that, Valerie? Yeah? Then, okay, can we just put that up there after consent so we can address his issue and get him out of here?
Okay, 13A. We're going to move to 9,
10.
10.
Okay. And do you guys want to keep land development and swales where they are and try to get through them in that order?
In all honesty, Mac, I'm just as happy to put swills at the very end of it. And if we don't get to it, we don't get to it.
Well, then why don't we do this, Judy? Why don't we do that and I keep calling it the wrong thing, land development right before that and keep those two things at the very end so we can get this other stuff done. And then we'll see what we can get to.
Okay.
Is everyone else cool with that? Okay.
Which one are we doing?
So, yeah, so land development and swales go to the end. Because we have a lot of little stuff we can get done. We're going to put,
13A is 10.
yeah, 12D is going to go to the very end. It's going to be the very last thing we do. And 12E is an Edward. Will
They
go
just
right
stay where they are because you've already moved the new discussion ahead. So they stay.
13B has to move up ahead of it.
Right, that's, yeah, from my understanding, we moved the discussion, new business, both items ahead of the resolution.
Oh, do you want to move both items up? That's fine. We can do that.
That's what I understood. Is it just one item or
I
both?
was just talking about the foundation item for
Oh,
Jonathan.
okay.
So put 13A up in, I guess as 10A. Is that right? Yeah. And swales as the last item and land development as the item before that. Judy, if you want swales to be in front of land development, I'm okay with that.
No, I'm not feeling my best. I just drove 12 hours. So
Okay, got it.
if we don't
Ma-
get to it today, I'm happy to
Okay.
deal with it another time.
Sounds good.
Madam Mayor, I'm also requesting that we move item 10C as in cat. This item, I apologize, should have been in discussion. It needs to go before the Planning Land Development Board for a vote and a recommendation before it can be read in first reading here. So we need to move 10C. We can either table it and bring it back in November as a first reading, or we can move it to discussion.
I think
I'm
we
sorry.
should table it.
So why is that? I'm sorry. And the demo
Yeah.
language.
Planning was not able to take a vote on it, so it's got to go to them first.
Oh, then let's just table it all together.
Okay.
And C is tabled.
Okay. So just to make sure we have everything, we are pulling 9A as an apple from consent. After the consent agenda, we'll be discussing item 13A as an apple. 13B, does that follow as well prior to ordinance or resolutions, or are we just moving 13B ahead of the old discussion, old business? Okay, so 13B as in boy goes in front of 12A. And then old business stays in the order that it's in. Okay. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve all those changes.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mhm. Okay, we have a proclamation, Red Ribbon Week. Whereas communities across America have been plagued by the numerous problems associated with illicit drug use and those that traffic them, and there is hope in winning the war on drugs, and that hope lies in education and drug demand reduction, coupled with the hard work and determination of organizations such as the Young Marines of the Marine Corps League to foster healthy, drug-free lifestyle. Governments and community leaders know that citizen support is one of the most effective tools in the effort to reduce the use of illicit drugs in our communities. The red ribbon has been chosen as a symbol commemorating the work of Enrique Camarena, a drug enforcement administrative agent who was murdered in the line of duty, and represents the belief that one person can make a difference. The Red Ribbon Campaign was established by Congress in 1988 to encourage a drug-free lifestyle and involvement in drug prevention and reduction efforts. October 23rd to 31st has been designated National Red Ribbon Week, which encourages Americans to wear a red ribbon to show their support for a drug-free environment. I, Virginia O'Halpin, Mayor of the Village of Biscayne Park, joined by the entire commission, do hereby proclaim October 23rd to 31st as Red Ribbon Week in Biscayne Park, and urge all citizens to join me in this special observance. Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor for public comments.
No, I'll be extremely brief.
It's not a,
Just hold it close.
hold it, say it.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening to the entire council. My name is Kesnel Theus. I'm here on behalf of State Representative Dottie Joseph. I'm her new legislative aide, so I just wanted to put a face to some of the names. please feel free to reach out to our office for any matters that's relating to policy, legislation, any way that we can be of assistance. I can be reached via email or by our office line, which I'll leave you here with my contact information. Thank you all. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
You have a card that you can leave with each of us? That'd be great. Thanks.
Are there any other public comments? Anyone on Zoom that wants
Yes.
to,
Madam Mayor, I have
Bob Anderson? Okay.
We're not hearing Bob.
Can't hear Bob.
How about now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, on the last code board meeting, that was September 28th. I went to take a look at it, because normally I could see it on YouTube. And I didn't see it recorded. Have you stopped recording the code board meetings?
Yes, sir. We are not, well, on the September 28th, I'm not sure if they did the recording. I believe we're live streaming it, but it's not on Zoom.
Okay, but I was looking on YouTube. This is normally it was on YouTube, where you could be watching it while the meeting was going on. Obviously, you can't participate. And I was wondering if you're going to be putting it back on YouTube, so we could at least watch the meetings.
I'm not sure that, I'm checking now to see if it was recorded.
We'll have to look. I'm not sure.
Okay, that was my question. That's all I have.
Okay, Janie Anderson?
You, Janie Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. Speaking to the proposed raising of permitting fees. Look, I totally understand there's a shortfall. You've got to deal with the shortfall. I get it. But as the saying goes, timing is everything. And I don't know that right now is the best time, to be quite honest and a little bit blunt. If you talk to anyone who's applied for a permit in the last several months, you're going to likely be hearing stories of massive delays, lack of communication, lack of response, even on simpler jobs. We were approved by Planning and Zoning on August 8th, just for two wrought iron handrails for the front porch, and then somehow fell through the cracks with the former building official not approving us, but apparently didn't leave any notes as to why. Then the new building official approved us. Well, now I'm still waiting for a very simple but rather critical question to be answered, and that's, how much do I owe? So I can come, pay it, print my permit, and get the project moving. I mean, I know we were closed 2 days last week, but there's still been 5 days that question could have been answered. I know there's a lot of work going on, but that's good for the village, that people are renovating and doing these projects. Somehow, we've got to be able to handle that. Also, I've got a question on the chart, the comparison chart to the other cities. Why not Miami Shores and El Portal? Why Miami Gardens, Bay Harbor, North Bay Village, and Hallandale Beach? That wouldn't seem to be communities that are similar to us in any way. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on Zoom? Okay.
Seeing none, Mayor.
Close public comments. We're moving 13A up for discussion, the foundation alcohol license usage and liabilities.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate you fitting me in.
You can pull that out and talk right into it, right?
That's easier.
Do your name and your address, please.
Jonathan Groth.
I'm sorry,
86
hold on. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Madam Mayor, after public comments, we do the commission replies to any comments and then reports and consent agenda.
I'm sorry, you'll have to wait just a few minutes. Okay. Commission, public comments, to commission reply to comments. Does any of the commissioners want to reply to any of the comments?
I'll make a reply.
Okay, go
and-
ahead, Judy.
I feel that at a time where the economy is where it is, certain of our permits should not be increased, things like septic and roof. I think people are having a difficult enough time. I think that going forward on some of the other permits that are more add-on to your house or new construction, I think we should still think about going ahead. I do understand there's issues with the delay in the rollout, and that's not always a good thing. And we're trying to solve that. And we pretty much, I think, all discussed it with Mario. But I still think we need to start going forward on some of it to get some more revenues back into the village.
Let me make a comment back, and I don't mean this to be confrontational at all.
Commissioner Kennedy, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't mean this to be confrontational at all. But when Art brought up last year the notion of having commissioners reply to public comment, it seems to have gone off course a little bit. In the interest of moving the meeting along, I think we should try to limit our comments back to residents. What happens often is a commissioner, a resident will make a comment about something that's on the agenda. We're going to get to it on the agenda and we're going to have a full conversation on it. We don't need commissioners replying to people and stating their opinion on an item during a reply to public comment. We're going to get there. So Judy, I'm interested in hearing what you think. And, but we often seem to get tangled up here and it just makes the meeting go longer, Judy, if nothing else, because we're going to have a whole conversation about it. So I'd like us to try to limit to specific things that someone might address that's not on the agenda and allow us to work through the agenda and address things when they come up, please.
We used to not reply to the comments, and if we'd like to go back to that, does everybody
Now,
agree?
in all honesty, Commissioner Kennedy's objection took more time than my comment, but that's all
Well,
right.
but Commissioner Kennedy's time may have taken more time tonight, but if you add up all the time that you have wasted, Judy, in meetings going on and on and
Okay,
on and on
okay,
and
that's
on,
enough.
you beat me
Does
by a mile.
everybody
So I
agree
was-
to
Not
So I
a
was,
chance.
so I was being nice, Judy, but now I'll just be blunt. You waste a lot of time at meetings.
Excuse
At
me.
this point in, I'm talking, Ginny.
Excuse me.
You waste a lot of
Now,
time at meetings. At this
Commissioner
point,
Kennedy, you're out
replying
of
back.
order.
Okay, does everybody agree to not have the commissioner?
No, that was not my suggestion at all. I'm saying reply to people if it's on the agenda, then let it come up, let the agenda item come up.
Listen, let me just say, this was my topic when I brought it up. The spirit of it was to address some questions that, like Commissioner Kennedy mentioned, may not necessarily be on the agenda, some questions that are outside the scope of the things that we will be discussing. That was the intent. Now, everybody has their opinion on how they want to do it, but that was the intent.
That's what I understood it to be as well. And so all I'm saying is keep it there, but limit it to things that aren't on the agenda and let us work through the agenda and everyone will have all their time during an agenda item to make their points clear.
Okay, does any of the commissioners have any reports? Are there any board reports? Village managers report.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to state a couple things. You don't have an attachment to this meeting in the September meeting because it was so far into the month. I reported everything through August. And in preparation for tonight's meeting, obviously, we were still in September, so we didn't have anything. So you'll get the September update for the November meeting, which will put us back on track. There are a couple points that I just wanted to mention, just to give you an update. With regards to the hurricane, Ian, we are extremely lucky, and my thoughts and prayers goes out to all those affected on the West Coast. Chief Cabrera has been able to dispatch one police officer who has family over on the West Coast to be part of the task force that Miami-Dade and various cities have put together to travel and to assist in search and rescue over there. So Biscayne Park is being represented at the moment, at least with one police officer. Also wanted to let you all know that Albert Dominguez, our Public Works director. He's been working with DOT in the county. We constantly have issues on Griffin Boulevard with the lights. And so the county's going to be inspecting all of the lights and all the circuits for the lights on Griffin Boulevard. Chief brought up that another municipality close to us recently arrested someone for stealing copper wires out of light poles and such. And so we've started asking questions to see if there's some kind of connection there as to how that's affecting our lights as well. So we are trying to find what the overall problem is so that we can find the solution to. And DOT on 6th Avenue, I reported a while ago that they agreed to paint the speed limit on the ground, install radar signs and so forth. We just received notification that they have received the plans from their contractor. And so they're going to review those plans before they then move forward with the installation. If I had to give you an educated guess, I would say either by the end of the year or first quarter of next calendar year for actual installation. As soon as we get an actual date, I'll be glad to share that, but we don't have an actual date for that yet.
Multiple locations down the boulevard?
Yeah. And then the commission at the last commission meeting requested an update with regard to the B house. They have appeared in front of the planning and the code board. They are working with the clerk to inspect the records that we have on file, and they're trying to coordinate a meeting with our building official to see what they can or cannot do with the property. So they are trying to work with the village at this time. Other than that, there's no other update for that property.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? I know one of the requirements, if we were to move forward with something at the county, is that we show that we're also trying to work with them. Are you satisfied that the boards and your staff are working with them well to try to keep this moving along as well?
Yes, sir.
So everyone's working nicely together. Awesome.
Yeah. That's everything, Madam Mayor.
Chief, do you have a report?
No, we're okay.
Oh, okay, that's not, okay. Okay, I'll need a motion to approve and second the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say
Aye.
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 Okay, we are moving 13A up before ordinances. 13A is discussion. And that's the foundation, alcohol license usage and liabilities. Your name and your address.
Thank you. Jonathan Groth, 862 Northeast 111. Here this evening in my capacity as Vice President of the Foundation Board. I appreciate you taking time to hear this. I'd like to just give you a little bit of background, some context as to what we're asking, why we're asking it. As I'm sure you're aware, the foundation puts on events for the neighbors to come out. We did the last Food and Tunes back in March, I think it was. And we have another event planned for November, a fall Food and Tunes event of sorts. We've never had any issues getting the temporary permits, the temporary alcohol permits that we use to sell beer and wine at the events. But a question has come up about an interpretation of the language within the application that we're looking for some guidance on. Specifically, what we're looking at, I believe this was attached to the addition to the agenda. It's Form DBPR ABT 6003. This is the application for the temporary permit. What we're looking at, or at least what the foundation looked at, specifically the language is on page 2. When a nonprofit or when an organization gets one of these temporary permits, the language here restricts who may sell alcohol using this permit. Specifically, it says the permitted bona fide nonprofit civic organization, charitable organization, municipality, or county may purchase alcohol beverages from a distributor or vendor licensed under the beverage law. And it goes on to say that all beverage sales transacted under the authority of this permit must be made by a responsible member of the permitted organization. So that's the operative language that we are looking at. And the reason we bring this up is because at the last event, one of the other foundation board members and myself, we took on most of the responsibilities of selling
You're a responsible person, huh?
I certainly hope so. Within the confines of the language, yes. So we, for most of the night, we were responsible for selling the alcohol through the temporary permit, and it didn't give us an opportunity to do anything else at the event, to speak with neighbors, to solicit donations, whatever else we had planned for that night. So in planning this upcoming event, our question was, are we allowed to have volunteers, or are we allowed to hire vendors to come in and help us with the sales pursuant to this language in the application? And we settled on asking for some assistance and some clarification from the village attorneys here. And it's my understanding that there's some confusion as to whether they are permitted to counsel us on the interpretation of this language. So I think tonight, that's what I'm here asking, whether we can seek guidance from the village attorney on the interpretation of this language.
No confusion on our part. We don't represent this sole corporation that has no affiliation with the village. We can only represent you guys. I don't want to be crass, but I mean, if they want to go ahead and hire us to provide them an opinion, that's a different story, but we can't do that and represent you folks at the same time.
So Ed, is that because they're a separate entity from the village? If it were another board asking or us asking, you could advise us, but not but because they're a separate organization. Okay, so our attorneys can't help you, Jonathan. So I guess now it comes back to us to try to help you figure this out.
My first question is, did anybody contact the Division of Alcoholic Beverages to find out from them? This looks like pretty clear language to me, but that would have been the first thing I would have done, was to call the people who regulate this and ask them.
Yeah, I did actually contact that division, and they just said that it was any member of the permitted organization, but the permitted organization being the foundation, the only member of the foundation, I believe, is the village. So it didn't really provide me too much clarification, unfortunately.
Is the village a member of the foundation?
I believe it's the sole member.
Sole member. So does that mean any employee of the village or any elected official is a member of the organization?
That's a good question. I'm not
Says
entirely
all
certain.
alcoholic beverage sales transacted under the authority of the permit must be made by responsible members of the permitted organization. So if the foundation is the permitted organization and the village is the sole member of the foundation, then it seems to me that every employee of the village, and I would think maybe even elected officials or board members who we appoint, because we appoint board members, we appoint all of you, we appoint the members of every other board, we appoint other boards that have used your license for things. So now that I understand that, it sort of makes me feel like there are a lot of people who could do this for you.
Who provides the license, Jonathan? The county?
I believe it's the
State?
yeah, the Division of Alcohol, Beverages, and Tobacco.
And you can't like deputize somebody, right?
That's what we're here. That's what we'd like to know. I don't want to run afoul of the language in this application by any
Well,
means.
I mean, listen, the way I read it, it's a member. I don't know.
But the village is the sole member of the foundation, so it seems
Individuals, right?
right, but the village is the sole member of the foundation. And we appoint
Board-
people to serve on the board of it. So it's the village who's the member.
Yeah, the board member, the board, and the individuals on the board are not members of the actual nonprofit.
Am I allowed to ask you guys questions about our membership in the foundation that don't relate to him? Can you explain that to us? Or if you can't, go ahead and tell me you can't.
Can you please speak into the mic and turn it on?
According to the amended bylaws, the one member, quote member, is the village of Biscayne Park Village Commission.
That means Commissioner Kennedy, if you want to be the bartender.
I was the best I was a bartender in the 80s, I'll tell you, and I could throw out some drinks. So it seems to me that if we are the sole member of the foundation, Jonathan's not a member of the foundation, he's appointed to the board. Seems to me the village is the member that would think that leaves it kind of wide open. There could be lots of people, including any staff member, or I would think commissioners. Well, Mario, you're saying, no, that's not true, or no, you don't want them to?
No, I don't recommend any staff be serving alcohol or selling alcohol. None of the staff has
Well, I
had
understand you don't
training.
recommend it.
none of the staff has had training to be able to determine whether they have exceeded their limit of tolerance or anything, and that would put a big risk onto the village. So I would not allow my staff to be selling alcohol unless the commission as a whole takes a vote demanding that I do so.
Okay, but if commissioners are on the board of the village, could we? I mean, we're not your employee.
I don't know. That would be more on the legal side.
And could other board members who we've appointed to other boards?
I wouldn't be able to give you that answer. I would seek.
I'm trying to find a way to get to a solution here. And it seems to me, now that I understand that the village is the sole member of the board, it opens it up to employees, and that's Mario's call if he doesn't want his employees serving alcohol, but board members as well, and the commission.
Madam Attorney, for the member on the foundation, does it specifically say Village of Biscayne Park Commission or just, so is there a comma in between those two or, okay, so my understanding would then be the 5 commissioners are the members of the foundation, not additional board members or anything like that, or even staff. It would have to be the commissioners themselves.
Yeah, I think that the elected commissioners certainly would be able to do that, as well as the board of directors of the foundation, but not any other boards.
Well, now that you asked that
That
question,
opens it
Mario,
up
it
a
sounds
bit.
like it's just the 5 of us. Jenny, you're the bartender at the next event.
Oh, it's you, it's you.
That's
Commissioner
fine.
Kennedy.
Jonathan, it sounds like, it sounds to me that the only people that are members of the foundation are the 5 of us sitting up here. Well, 4 of us and Judy's here by Zoom, 5 commissioners. So seems to me if we are members of the foundation, we could be bartenders for you. We can sell alcohol. To you. That's that's how I read it. Now that Valerie has explained who the member of the foundation is.
And so Commissioner Kennedy will be your bartender.
Was that him
Or somebody
volunteering?
as dependable as him.
They did throw that in there, didn't they?
We would certainly recommend that if you folks are going to do that any further, that you get with our insurance broker or insured to make sure that the village has coverage for these events.
So that was my,
All on village property.
so liability was my other question, Mario. So it's been happening for as long as I've lived here and years before that. So are we covered for alcohol at an event?
I would have to look back at the past events, but I believe part of it is I know for special events, they have to be able to grab insurance and indemnify the village. I thought that the foundation would do that as well, but I'm not sure right now. So I'd have to kind of look into that to make sure that that's.
When you
that's
say they, who do you mean?
whoever's
Whoever's
putting-
serving the alcohol.
right, or putting the event on, that they would have to have some kind of insurance policy that indemnifies the village for that.
So all these years that we've been doing this, we've been doing it incorrectly? Is that what we're saying?
I don't know, sir. I couldn't tell you that. I don't know if there was ever some type of policy or something that was taken out. So I'd have to kind of look into it. I do know as part of special event, whether it's at the park or at someone's property or something like that, we require that they put us on their insurance and indemnify us
So
as an addition.
Private property? No.
On the village, especially, yeah, especially if they're going to be parking outside of their private property and things like that, then yeah, we would require insurance. Yeah.
Never done that before.
That's what it
Well,
is to me.
we,
Never done
So
that.
Follow
beer
up
and
that.
wine, Judy, at prior things?
Oh, yeah.
Event, we're going to require a
Sure.
certificate of insurance? That doesn't make any.
Seems like a lot of liability.
I hope we answered your question, Jonathan.
The other thing worth pointing out is, and this is kind of where you start,
made it a lot more complicated for future events.
if you
Talked
really,
about this part too. It's
Well, bring your own liquor.
the reason
Jonathan.
we're here.
if you parse words here, it says all alcoholic beverage sales transacted under the authority of the permit. A transaction is a sale. It's not the pouring of it. It doesn't sound like to me that someone else can't pour the wine or, fill up a glass out of the keg. It sounds like the
They're the
transaction,
ones exchanging.
the exchange of money for the alcohol has to be handled by a responsible person, one of the commissioners. So it sounds like you could have more than one person there handling the function, but the money would have to be handled by one of the commissioners.
Mhm.
That's how I read it. So if you're really going to parse words, it sounds like the exchange of money has to be handled by one of the responsible parties, one of us, but other people could fill up the glass.
Which is probably why they sell tickets usually at those types of functions.
Oh, that's actually a really good point, Ginny.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
they would sell, so one person can.
Oh, did you catch what Ginny said?
So
You
is
could
there
have
a-
one person selling tickets and that person is a responsible party, and then other people could be handling the booth where the alcohol is being poured, because then,
All they collect is a
because
ticket.
you're redeeming a ticket. So the transaction is, I need to buy 3 drink tickets. And they go to Ginny to buy their 3 drink tickets, and then they go to you to get their 3 beers. Keep trying to slide that in, Ginny.
Anyhow, is that discussion? Anybody else want to chime into the liability of selling alcohol? And
So you're going to check on our general policy and see how that works, and no one, so are we certain that no one's ever, Judy, were you on is Judy here? No, she's not there. Was she on the foundation at one point? Was Judy on the foundation at one point?
I believe so.
Never,
We're not, okay. I
never.
just wonder if anyone ever had any
No.
kind of insurance policy for it. Okay, so Mario will find out that part, but it seems to me,
I can guarantee they didn't, because I've been around and I've never, ever heard them talk about it.
No.
And I wouldn't even know where they would go to get it. But I've never been on it myself. I've just been around.
so we need to try to wrap this up for Jonathan. I personally am happy with how we just interpreted that. Have one of us handle the transaction, the money, and then other people can give out, drinks based on drink tickets. If that's how you want to do it, I'm totally cool with that. And let Mario get back about the liability.
Mario is going to check on the liability, right? And if it is going to be, it has to be a commissioner then selling tickets.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
volunteers, whoever's serving the wine, but all they're collecting is a ticket. They're not exchanging money.
So then is the conclusion that we are reaching here that the commission are the only individuals that are able to sell these tickets, assuming that that's the way we do this, or can the board, the foundation
that-
board individuals do that as well?
I think overall it was the foundation board and the commission can.
That's the way I would look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to be clear for next week. We have a meeting on Tuesday. If
You have
any-
it clear, huh? Okay, that's very
if,
good.
no, as clear as as we
Clear as
can
mud.
get.
I
If
think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, if we have any answer on the insurance information or policy information, we will be meeting on Tuesday in 1 week from today at 7 o'clock. So we'll be discussing it again at that time.
Okay,
Maybe we could put the drink tickets and the complaint booth all in one.
that would be good.
There you go. Double whammy. Look, all the commissioners in that one.
We should practice at their next meeting though.
Selling tickets
Yeah, and drinking.
or drinking?
Oh, he's gonna
Drinking.
See how it works then,
Yeah, just
huh?
to make sure-
Art, to see how, when you give a ticket,
That's
you
the
get a drink,
system.
how it
Make
works.
sure we got the right vibe.
Okay.
Well, I will
Thank you
discuss
very
with the
much.
foundation next week. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, we will go then to ordinance 2022-10, amending Great Waste franchise agreement, second reading. Ed?
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, approving a First Amendment to the franchise agreement with Great Waste and Recycling Services LLC for solid waste collection services, providing the village manager the authority to do all things necessary to effectuate the ordinance, providing that future amendments to the franchise agreement may be by resolution, repealing all ordinances inconsistent with this ordinance, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on ordinance 2022-10? Is there anybody on Zoom that has a public comment? Seeing none, I request a motion to approve. One second.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Hammelberg made the motion and Commissioner Gonzalez seconded it. Is there any discussion, commission discussion?
I read through it and it's pretty much everything we discussed at our last meeting. So
Okay. No, just,
Sorry. Yeah, I have a couple of things I want to say and ask as well, because I didn't see that it's not what I understood it to mean to be. But it's not what I was expecting to come back. So I think it might be good to have Mario kind of recap what this means. I'd like to hear Mario explain it. We communicated by email about this a bit today. And there was that last email, Mario, that I think we would all benefit from understanding what you wrote to me.
Sure. And so just to keep it simple, the franchise fee is 11%. Okay. We are discussing a 10% waiver of the franchise, or up to 10% waiver of the franchise fee. Of that 10%, 4.6 will be a constant wave throughout the year, will be waived constantly throughout the year. Then you have an additional 5.4% that will be looked at on a quarterly basis based on the fuel cost for diesel and the U.S. labor statistic of what the cost is for the Miami-Fort Lauderdale region. That will be if the cost of fuel is above $3.72, then the contractor would be able to receive up to 5.4%. Now, when we did the calculation to see what that 5.4% represented in dollars and cents, the threshold is if the fuel is more than $3.92, they would receive the full 5.4. However, if the fuel is somewhere between $3.72 and $3.92, then that will be looked at on a per penny basis. So the example in the memo shows a fuel cost of $3.90. And so it would show that their franchise fee essentially that they would have in that quarter would be the 1% that would be billed on a monthly basis, and the 0.04% for the gas fuel surcharge, and that would total what they would pay for on the franchise fee. Once you start getting into numbers, it starts feeling like it's a lot more complicated than what it really is. But overall, we're talking about a 10% waiver of the franchise fee.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions then. So in other words, the franchise fee is 11%.
Mhm.
The most that we're giving up is 10%. So we're going to get 1% of the franchise fee regardless. At minimum, through the course of the year, we're
Mhm.
going to get 1%. See, that's one part I had not understood before, Art. That's one of the things I didn't quite get. I'm not sure where that slipped through the cracks, but so then side question, Mario, then why didn't we budget that revenue, that 1% revenue? If we knew that at worst, we'd be getting 1%.
That stays within the sanitation fund.
Right.
And that was constantly changing up until after the
So
first
even
reading.
until tonight, it wouldn't have been a number you could come up with. Okay, so at worst, we're going to get 1% that we'll recognize as revenue, and we'll recognize it the way you explained to us at the last.
Correct. It stays
Okay.
within the sanitation
So
fund.
at
and
worst,
will
we get
carry
the
over.
1% all year. So if the price of fuel is below 372, we get all of it.
We get the
get
entire
all of it.
5.4%
If it's I'm sorry? For
for
that
the quarter.
yeah.
Correct.
And if it's you get 5.4, right? Yeah. And if it's above 392, they get all of it.
All of the 5.4.
All of the 5.4. We're talking about 5.4.
Right.
So they get all of the 5.4. And if it's between 372 and 392, then it's kind of prorated. That's the part that I do not remember us discussing. I don't remember us discussing.
You had asked that it be measured to the penny.
Right, but I don't remember discussing the 372 to 392.
Well, the 372 triggers the fuel
Right.
surcharge. And then if you find out what 5.4% above $3.72 means,
Mhm.
that figure is 392.
Three is the 392.
So that's where you would start looking at, because anything above 5.4%, they get the full
get it all.
5.4, right? So you're only counting
So
to the
there's two
penny.
triggers. There's the 372 trigger and the 392 trigger. 372 starts the whole thing and 392 is where it kicks into the
Determines-
full 5.4.
Right. Anything below 392 will determine how much of that 5.4 they would receive. And that's calculated to the penny.
Right. Any other discussion? Dante, can you do a roll call on that, please?
Yeah. Let me look at my notes for a second, Jenny. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Look, guys, this is really important and it impacts us for the full year and it's a big chunk of money and it's the first time we've ever done this. And there is language in there that makes it very clear that this is for this one fiscal year only. So I was glad to see that's in here and that's very clear. I guess this is more administrative questions, Mario, how this is going to work. So they're going to submit quarterly. I think if I understand what it says in the third paragraph of how the billing works, they're going to submit quarterly at 6.4% and they have, or we submit rather, and they have 30 days to send an adjusted invoice back to you. Is that correct? I would like it to happen as quickly as possible each quarter. And it just sort of feels a little loosey-goosey there about how all of this is going to happen at the end of a quarter.
Right. So the way that the franchise fee is billed is they send us the monthly invoice that is paid. We send them a monthly invoice for the franchise fee. So on a quarterly basis, so it would be now October through December, then January through March, and so forth. So now in October, we would see where that lies, and then we would calculate whether they get the full 10% or somewhere below the 10%. And then we would send out an invoice for whatever the correct franchise fee would be on a quarterly basis. So it would be before the invoice from the village to the vendor
Right.
would go out. That's when we would do that calculation, and that would be more on staff.
So staff is going to look at the price of fuel and figure this out. I thought the vendor was going to report back to you.
We
what
would
it
still
was,
do
you
a
would-
confirmation.
And you would confirm it, right?
Yeah, we would
Then
still
you
do-
send them the bill. So what period of time is all this going to happen? Because we're working on a 3-month quarter and I wouldn't want this to drag out.
So it would happen. We would look now in October, once this passes, we would look at, but typically we would look, for example, we'll look again in the beginning of January to see what the previous 3 months covered. I can't look in December because we're still in that quarter.
Right, I understand.
So as soon as that quarter is done and we have those numbers posted by the US Labor, what the cost of fuel in this area would be, then we would be able to say, okay, this is where the cost is. It's above this threshold. So we're, this part of the franchise fee is waived, or this is how much you owe us and you're not entitled to.
Okay. So you're comfortable that the
Yes.
back and forth billing will happen
Yes.
quickly and you won't be.
Yeah, and we've worked that out with
I'd hate for
Paul's
another
group.
Quarter to be, coming to a close and the previous one hadn't been reconciled yet.
All that's been worked
Okay.
out with Paul.
Okay. I have no more questions, but I do just want to say, I haven't liked this, guys, from the very beginning. I've not been a fan of this, and I feel like 1 year into our waste contract, we should not have been doing this. Up to this point, I've been trying to figure out how I can minimize the damage, quite frankly. I'm voting against this because I never wanted it in the first place. And I don't, quite frankly, think 1 year into the contract, it worries me what's going to happen for subsequent years. We've laid the foundation for this to continue. I know it expires September 30th of next year, but it sure does set a precedent for them to come back and say, you did it, we need it again, guys. And come back and, and plead their case and go through all the machinations that we went through the last couple of months. And then there we are again. And it's kind of hard to undo that precedent that we set. So I've never liked it. I'm voting against it. But I do want to say that the vendor's providing good service, Mario. I'm very pleased from what I hear myself personally and what I hear from other residents. They're providing good service. And I think that we are fairly compensating them for that per the contract that we all agreed to that they presented to us.
Okay, Shante, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor O'Happen,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Samaria,
No.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Hammelberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy, I believe you said no.
No.
Okay. Mayor, ordinance number 2022-10 passes 3-2.
Okay. Ordinance 2022-11, amending section 13-2 of the Village Land Development Code, renaming the village's planning board, second reading. Ed?
An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending section 13.2, Planning Board of Chapter 13, Planning Board and Local Planning Agency of the Village's Land Development Code, to rename the Planning Board to the Planning and Design Review Board, and to include design review responsibilities, providing for inclusion in the code and scrivener's errors, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Ed. Is there any public comments? Seeing none, I'd like a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-11, amending section 13.2 of the Village Land Development Code, renaming the Village Planning Board, second reading.
Okay, Commissioner.
Happy to second it.
Commissioner Samaria made the motion and seconded by Commissioner Hammelberg. Any discussion from the commissioners? Shante, can you please call the roll?
Mayor O'Happen,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Samaria,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Hammelberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
Mayor, ordinance number 2022-11 passes second reading.
Thank you. Ordinance 2022-12 has been tabled to next month. Do I need a vote on that? Ordinance 2022-13, amending section 2-33 titled Village Canvassing Board of Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances, first reading. Ed? It's a mouthful, huh?
Ooh, I apologize. An ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, amending section 2-33 titled Village Canvassing Board of Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Biscayne Park to revise the composition and duties of the Village Canvassing Board, amending Article 5 Elections of Chapter 2 Administration, providing that the village clerk shall serve as the village supervisor of elections, repealing section 2-62 with respect to early voting, providing for the manner in which to call for and advertise a village election, providing for a defined candidate qualifying period, providing for inclusion in the code and scrivener's errors, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Mario.
Just to summarize what essentially the changes mean, the code, it does not reflect what Miami-Dade County Elections Department does and their procedures. They no longer come out to count the votes here at Village Hall or anything like that. And the canvassing board isn't the one that's counting any of the votes or anything. Miami-Dade Elections handles all that and follows state statutes. And also, we're just trying to align our code to meet what the county does and how they handle the elections. And this was brought up because obviously neither Shante nor I have been here for an election. And so when we were trying to see what our duties were, we started reading and we're like, wait a minute, we got to count what? Like, so we started calling Miami-Dade County. We started asking them, you know, what is it that we should be doing, they do. And for the most part, I think most cities don't even go out to the county to look at the counts or anything like that. So again, we're just trying to align our code with what the proper procedure would be for Miami-Dade County.
Okay, are there any public comments on that?
I'll-
I'd like a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 22-13, amending section 233, title Village Canvassing Board, Chapter 2, Administration of the Code Ordinance.
Motion made by Commissioner Samari and seconded by,
Be happy to second it.
okay. It was actually seconded by Commissioner Kennedy. You couldn't hear him, Judy, I'm sorry. Can we have a roll call vote on that?
I have a couple of comments and questions. I'm not sure if anyone else does. Dan looks like he might.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Commissioner.
okay. So a couple of quick things. I understand what we're changing here and why we have to do it, but I read the entire thing and I have a couple of questions. 2-33D as in dog reads, the village clerk shall present a certificate of election results to the village commission at the first meeting of the village commission following an election. So my question is, what if we don't have a clerk or the clerk can't attend the meeting for some reason? What happens? Does Mario designate someone? Do we need to make that clear in there? I mean, what if there's no clerk employed at the time, or she's ill or can't get here? And it seems like one of those things you have to fuss over, but it might be important because she is turning over the election results to the commission and we have to accept them that evening. So if there's not a clerk, what happens?
Somebody would be designated as a village clerk.
Do we need to put that in there?
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay.
The same way everywhere where it says city manager has the
Yeah.
authority, there's nowhere to say city manager or an interim city manager.
Okay.
It's understood that if somebody's acting in that position and they have. the
You're
authority-
comfortable with that? The reason I ask is this village has had funny business, not Shantae, but there has been like weird, funny business regarding election results and people being sworn in, and just want to avoid that happening again. Then later in that same paragraph, Valerie, it says, canvassing of election returns shall be conducted under applicable provisions of the Florida statutes. Everything else is stricken. Does that one sentence kind of provide for all of that stuff that was taken out? There's like tons and tons of stuff that was stricken. But
Okay,
basically that sentence says, we'll follow the rules.
correct. We're gonna follow Florida statutes. There was a lot of stuff that was included in here that is no longer not the practice. It doesn't comport with Florida statutes or with the county practice. The county is the one that provides all of these services.
So you took out all the messy stuff and put that one sentence in that just says, we'll follow it, we'll do it the Florida way. Got it. Okay, thank you. 2-63, it's probably going to be the same answer.
Which
the-
will be renumbered.
Right. 2-63, the village clerk to serve as the supervisor of elections. And again, if we don't have a clerk at the time, same thing, or someone that Mario designates?
Whoever is your acting clerk.
Okay, so you're cool with it not specifying that?
Yes.
Okay. 2-64 talks about, let me find it here.
Provide for election information
Mhm.
to be advertised. So this came up actually because Shantae, having come from other jurisdictions which all provide for how you're going to advertise an election, the village code was completely silent. So it did have for advertising when the canvassing board would meet, but not for when an election was going to be called. So consistent with what other jurisdictions do, we included that. So everybody's put on notice when an election could be. 'Cause it's not just a general, but it could be
Mhm.
aligned with the general countywide election.
Understood. So this was the section where I think there was something about timing of something that we have to do it within a certain period of time.
Not less than 45 days.
Yeah, because I just thought this upcoming election, we're not going to make the timing of when we'll,
Currently, we don't have anything in our code to advertise for an election. So this is providing for that.
okay, so then it wouldn't even count for
the
this time.
general,
So
Correct.
it's not going to mess us up for this upcoming election.
No, 'cause we're not
Okay.
gonna get second reading in before.
Got it. And then the last thing is 2-61. Boy, is that confusing. It's about vacancies. If a commissioner dies, resigns, removed from office. That is, I read that so many times and I can't make heads or tails out of that.
That's your existing code.
Okay. Is there something we could do there to make that be a little more user-friendly? Because I think I know, before I read it, if you asked me, I would think I would have told you the answer. But did you guys read this? It's a mess. Read 2-61. Special procedures for filling vacant commission seats. And try to figure that out. I just think this is one of those things that could, on the the one time that it happens, we're going to get all tangled up over this thing. So Valerie, could you maybe explain to us what you think the intent of it is? Is this standard language that other communities use or that the state uses or something?
There are always going to be procedures for filling a vacant commission seats. I can't tell you that this is verbatim what other jurisdictions use. I wouldn't be able to say. If there's consensus to provide something that clarifies it further, we'll be happy to do that.
Did you guys read this? Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think this has happened actually in the past that I think we had a commissioner elected official one time pass away when they were in office. I'm reading it now and I can't make, again, I think I know how it's supposed to work, but these words don't say that. So this is first reading. Should we maybe ask Valerie to try to make this a little more clear somehow and come at second reading, come back with what the intent is? You guys care?
No.
Since it's not going to be used in this election, I don't see that there's an absolute rush. So I don't see that there's a problem with letting it be clarified a little bit more.
You mean for second reading, Judy?
Yeah. No, before second reading, of course.
Yeah. She'll bring it back at second reading. Doesn't sound good.
Well, that sounds good, Judy. Okay. Can we proceed?
Yeah, I just want to look at this. There's one specific thing in here. Yeah, I think it's second reading. If you could just tighten that up and make it really clear, and it might need to be like a bullet pointed kind of thing. If this, then that. If this, then that. If this, then that. Just to make sure it's abundantly clear that all the different possibilities and timings of elections and resignations or deaths are accounted for.
Is the direction from the commission that the sections stay as is, but is bulleted so it's easier to understand, or does the commission want to change what's in the section?
Well, it's
I think that's
hard
important for us to be able to kind of clarify.
Again, I think I know what it means, but it's all tangled up in this paragraph. So I think if she comes back, if she untangles this and makes it clear, we'll be able to, I hope we can pass it at second reading.
Would we be able to advertise it so that if there's changes, we don't have to have a third reading or a second reading?
We'll provide a title.
Okay, that will incorporate.
Good point.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of cover us in the title for whatever changes we might make, as long as it's not anything real substantive there. Got it. Okay, you guys okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Shante, you want to call the roll, please?
Mayor O'Happen,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Samaria,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Hammerberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yeah, do we need to specify that I'm asking for changes for next time, or I just voted through?
No.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Mayor, ordinance number 2022-13 passes first reading. 5-0.
Okay. Resolution 2022-43, approving an agreement between the Florida Department of Transportation and the Village of Biscayne Park.
A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park approving the turf and landscape maintenance department funded agreement between the Florida Department of Transportation and the Village of Biscayne Park, authorizing the village manager to execute the agreement and to do all things necessary in furtherance thereof, and providing for an effective date.
Is there any discussion on that?
Also, I'd like to hear what he has, what,
Do we need a motion first?
No, I agree with Commissioner Gonzalez. Since you wanted it off, I wanted to see what your opinion is on it.
I know. Do we need to make a motion first is my question.
Oh, motion for discussion. Right? Yeah, I'll make a motion for discussion.
I'll second it. Okay, so I asked to have this pulled off consent. I don't have a problem with the item itself, but it seems like an opportune time to talk about the 6th Avenue median. So this isn't, for people who are listening, this is an agreement between the village and the state, whereas the state pays us to maintain the 6th Avenue median. So they own the median, but rather than have them come take care of it, they pay us some money and we take care of it throughout the year. And it's interesting because I had never really read that closely before, but I took this opportunity to read it. So I have no problem with the item. They're offering what they offer. We already budgeted for it. It's all fine. But it seems like an opportune time to talk about the 6th Avenue median, because this is a contract where we're agreeing to do certain things and to maintain it at a certain level. And they're pretty specific. I was really kind of surprised. It's a long agreement, but they're very specific in the finances of it, exactly what they're paying us for. So here's the reason I brought it up. The 6th Avenue median, I get quite a few complaints about it from residents. And it doesn't look so hot. So I don't think the state of Florida is getting what they're paying us for. It's not a matter of us not getting what we're paying for this time. It's the state's not getting what it's paying for. So there are minimum standards built into that agreement. And I'd like to hear, and by the way, I told Mario that I was going to have this pulled off consent tonight, so I wouldn't be catching him off guard, because I wanted him to be able to have a conversation with us about this. So it doesn't look great often. It doesn't look great now. I went there on Saturday and drove past it. I took some pictures if anybody wants to see them, and sections of it look okay. And some of it looks really just awful, with palm trees growing where they're not supposed to, and tons of weed and grass. Like, my goodness, the grass is like, I bet it's almost 3 feet tall in some places and gone to seed, and it's just making itself worse. So Mario, this is not a criticism of anything. I just want to know, are we meeting the minimum standards that are required in that contract?
For $2,800 a year, we way surpass it.
That's what
And if the commission would like to reject the agreement, I'm okay, because $2,800 is not going to change anything. The difference here is that if DOT maintains it, okay, they will come once a month, maybe once every other month, to cut the grass, to do whatever they got to do. We provide a lot more service for that area than what DOT will give us. So we're actually losing money on this deal. But just to give you, I asked Albert, and he couldn't make it. He had a medical procedure this week, so he couldn't make it. But I asked him for an update as to, what efforts do we have? And he broke it down between reoccurring and non-reoccurring. And so twice per week, we typically have, it's mainly 2 crew members from Public Works that maintain 6th Avenue. And they do twice per week, they do litter pickup. Twice per month, they do mowing. Twice per month, they do weeding and edging as well. Once a month, they do trimming of ficus bushes. Once a month, they also do trimming of the palms and going up and making sure that there's no palm fronds and stuff. They try to go through that. And then we also have the quarterly and administrative work that has to do. So on a monthly basis, we put in at least 88 man hours into 6th Avenue. Now, on non-reoccurring, and that 88 hours accounts for about 11% of the total Public Works man hours that we have in the month. And so, and that doesn't include any special events, assignments. There's a lot of issues that we face. We only have 5 crew members, and it's not anybody who can just go out there because of the capabilities of the crew members. So you have staff shortages. Staff will take, they've been here a long time. They got a lot of hours accrued. So they'll go and they'll take a 2-week vacation. Then when that person comes back, the other person will take a vacation, or someone gets sick or whatnot. What ends up happening is that's not the only area that they have to maintain. There's other duties that they do. So you're constantly trying to fit as much as you can into it. So I've asked let's reevaluate, and instead of having the firm twice a month, once a week, let's look at the seasons, because obviously when it's rainy season, it's going to grow a lot faster than it will during the dry season, right? And so we'll make some minor adjustments here and there. Non-reoccurring things that they do on 6th Avenue is planting and mulching, irrigation repair. They're there basically weekly. And also any kind of cleanup after accidents and stuff like that. On a yearly basis, that accounts for about 260 man hours per year. So in total, we're talking about over 1,000 man hours of public works crews on 6th Avenue alone. So yeah, we definitely meet the minimum threshold. Could we do a few things better? Yes, you're absolutely right. I think we could, but we are trying to juggle because public works is a skeleton crew as it is. The 5 guys, there's not enough that we have with there's not enough crew to take over everything that we do. And I also wanted to see, okay, well, where can we improve some of those efficiencies? Unfortunately, we have 2 crew members that are dedicated to doing median maintenance, the doggy bags and even the trimming on the near the ground level of the trees and protecting and stuff like that. And that's really as much as those 2 crew members can do. Then you have 2 other crew members that are assigned to 6th Avenue. And then the other duties for those 2 crew members, one does all the facility maintenance. So cuts the grass at each of the facility buildings, does the landscape maintenance. So the butterfly gardens, the log cabin at the park, any special projects that come on in addition to 6th Avenue. The other person that works on 6th Avenue does median maintenance above ground, so mainly all the tree trimming that they would end up doing, equipment management throughout the village, ordering equipment, supplies, and various special project and those quote unquote daily fires that we see, right? And then we have one last member who's a mechanic. And so he makes sure all the equipments are constantly running. There's a lot of work that he ends up doing because our equipment is typically very old. And so there's a lot of fixes and band-aids that he's constantly working, sharpening the blades for all the mowers and everything that we constantly do. So he does a lot of that. He also does maintenance of the village facilities, whether it's the ACs and the septic tanks and all that kind of stuff. And so
the answer is
they're
we're
spread out
doing
pretty
more.
thin.
We're doing more.
Yeah, we're spread out pretty thin. And when they take their time off for either sick or vacation, it's even less, right? And so that's where we start seeing, when those things happen, we start seeing a lot of where the condition is right now. We just had 2 members out for the past 3 weeks. So we start seeing the condition of 6th Ave kind of, it looks like it's kind of gone wild.
And it comes up so fast, especially this time of
Does.
year, to your
Guys,
point about seasonality.
So when Mac pulled this, I thought, Mac, you were going to talk about the ridiculous amount of money that they give us. It's obscene, in my opinion. I really think it's ridiculous. It's a joke. $2,800 for the year for. Ooh.
And they also make it clear, Art, in the very end of the financial page, it says the local government may choose to exceed the required minimum maintenance
Yeah.
at no additional cost to the department.
So-
So they also make it very clear, if you're going to do more, we're not going to give you more.
So to be clear,
Let FDOT.
yeah, so to be,
No, I don't think we do that.
Yeah, and I, believe me, I've had that conversation as well, and I don't recommend it because then it's even worse.
okay, but let me just say something. So to be clear, what 6th Avenue is, this is not a new issue. Okay, let's start there. Okay, this has been ongoing forever. The problem is that this is a losing battle, okay? Unless all the plants that are on 6th Avenue are pulled out and a weed barrier first is put down and then plants planted on top of the weed barrier, you're gonna need a person out there if you want to really maintain 6th Avenue on a daily basis, every day. And we can't do that, can't afford it. We have other things to do. So I would suggest to go back to FDOT and say, hey, this $2,800 ain't covering it. So if you want us to continue this, we'll be happy to do it. Rip out all the plants, put a weed barrier down, replant it, and then we will maintain it. Because this is a losing battle. You're never
Yeah,
going to win.
I agree with the sentiment, Commissioner. The concern is,
Cost of that first. of all.
no, it's
I don't
not
care about
the
that. It's
cost
their
of
problem.
it. I know how DOT works.
Uh-huh.
And they will simply say, not a problem. They will remove every planting that's on 6th Avenue, plant grass, and we're done. And that's not what this community wants either. And so unless
Well,
we're
grass would look
willing.
a lot better than what it looks like right now, my friend, to be quite honest with you.
It's completely up to the commission.
And
I
it
can
never, and
definitely
it's
go and
never
ask.
changed. It's never
Yeah,
changed.
I can go and ask. And my fear is that their immediate is, oh, it's not a problem. You know, we can definitely maintain it. Don't worry. And you want to rip this stuff up, not a problem, and cut everything down. They might even cut down the tree itself and just put, you know, a grass median or just concrete throughout the thing. If you see, because their priority is simply,
So why don't you tell them we'll do it and we'll bill them for it? How about that?
they won't
Tampoco.
pay for it. Now, we could do it ourselves,
Mhm.
and we're accepting all the liability that would come with it, right?
So this is a losing battle, is basically what you're saying. We're never going to win this battle.
Usually in these type of cases, it's not necessarily a losing battle, but it's never a quick battle or a quick turnaround. I mean, look, we've been talking about the improvements to 6th Avenue just to paint the speed limit on the lanes itself for 2 years now, and we might get it by the end of the year, maybe at the beginning of next year. At least they now have the plans for painting the speed limit. So unfortunately, it's not their priority. I will definitely talk. That's
Talk
not
to
a
them.
problem, and I'll report next month
Yeah.
exactly what's going
Just
on.
ask them, say, listen, you know,
I just don't want to give you or anybody in our community a false hope of, oh, there's a simple solution, they'll just redo it, because that's not how this monster works. You know, so I have no problem going back and seeing what we can do, or seeing, hey, maybe they'll give us the money to replan everything, and I'll be happy to work with Parks and Parkway and get, you know, a good model for 6th Avenue.
maybe you come with them.
Make
with a
it really
price
nice, but
before you tell them.
yeah, I just don't want to set that expectation
I-
of this
I
is
get
an
it,
easy thing to
But
do.
it's
Yeah.
very frustrating.
Not a problem.
Yeah,
We can
so-
definitely do that.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to respond to something you said earlier. I was not intending to say, don't approve this. That was not what I was.
No,
going
no,
for.
I
It
didn't
was really
take
about
that at all.
What can we make, how can we make it
No,
better? But you know, it's one of the two gateways through our village, right? 6th and Griffin. And it says a lot about a community, you know, how it looks when people are entering it. And for many people, it's the only thing they see of Biscayne Park as they pass through. And I just don't want us to look like we're kind of falling apart. So maybe there are other options. And then another option would be next year during budget season, maybe we see if we can add someone on to Public Works, so you have an extra set of hands, because it sounds like when you run through that list, it's not just 6th. We have lots of places where we could use some more TLC on the landscaping. So maybe that's a consideration next year. We try to figure out what would that cost us? Because if you're saying you're spending a lot of,
minimum $70,000.
then we'd have that conversation next year. Maybe it's a conversation we can have. I mean, doesn't hurt to have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Budget time, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So, but the bottom line is, I think it sounds like we all wanted that to look better, and often it doesn't. So I just thought this was a good time to bring the topic up. So thanks for jumping in, Art.
Not a problem. And one last comment, Commissioner Kennedy, I apologize if it came off as defensive or anything. That wasn't the intent. My intent was to be able to illustrate this village right now and this commission right now, we're, to use an old metaphor, we're punching above our weight class, right? And we're doing a lot of things, and we're moving forward with a lot of things that, for the budget, the staff, and the things that need to be done, it's not realistic that those things would happen. And we're accomplishing quite a bit, but I don't want to paint a picture where it's unrealistic, and I never want to give unrealistic expectations. So I wanted for you all to get a good understanding of what it is that we do, and okay, where can we improve, and how can we use what the resources we have. And we're a skeleton crew throughout the entire village. And yes, I would love to add more staff. I'm all for that. The question is, how do we do that without impacting other services or projects, right? And so that's when I'm building that budget and I present it to you for that first time in July, there's a lot of back and forth that I do of where do I sacrifice on staffing or bringing new staff in, or you know, other expenditures for the sake of a project, or where do we sacrifice the project for the sake of these other things. And it's a very delicate, because at the end of the day, again, for the residents, our total budget's $3.7 million. That is a drop in what total expenditures would be for a normal city. So we are definitely punching above our weight class. And I think we might even be punching even higher now that we're getting a lot of these other things done, and we're moving those things forward. So I apologize if it came off defensively or anything like that.
Wasn't like that.
I just wanted to give you all a clear picture of it.
Okay,
Now,
so
my only concern about getting FDOT in there to do anything is how do we trust them? I mean, they put those lights in that blind me anytime I drive up to 6th Avenue at night. And they've refused to change the bulbs out. And so if we want FDOT to do stuff, we give up our control to them. So I'm not sure we really want them making decisions in our village. I think it's better that we take their pittance of amount and we deal with it the best we can ourselves.
Absolutely.
So do we want to move ahead on this? Okay, we had a motion by Commissioner Samaria. We did not have a second on that
I'll second it.
This was only a motion for discussion.
for discussion. Okay. Okay,
Make a motion to approve.
okay, and seconded by Commissioner Hammelberg.
Correct.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. Commissioner Gonzalez voted no. Okay. 13B, exterior lighting. BP's code is silent in regard to exterior lighting, at least from my own research and from discussion. I think this is yours.
This is Commissioner Kennedy's, who stepped away for a second. Do we want to go into?
Okay, BP's code is silent in regard to exterior lighting, at least from his own research and from discussing this topic with Planning Board Chair Gage Hartog. You want to finish that?
Sure, sorry about that. I thought we were doing windows and doors next, codification of windows and doors. So I thought I'd run to the restroom quick. It's fine. So let me pull this up. So this is something I have been wanting to bring to us for a while. And then some lighting things happened in the village recently, and I thought I better float this up faster, pull it up farther on my list. So our code is silent about exterior lighting in terms of residential lighting. And then we can also discuss exterior lighting as village lighting as well. So tonight, I'm not asking us to have a big conversation about it, about what we want and what we don't want. I don't think it's the time for that. But what I'd like us to do is have a quick discussion about the general topic and agree that we may want to have a bigger conversation about that we're not prepared to because we don't have all the facts. I have some concerns and I wonder how things might be better in terms of exterior lighting. We have several boards and staff and folks that could help us understand the topic better so we could have a bigger conversation. So I'm not even prepared to have a conversation about it. I have some opinions about it that I won't share right now, but between the planning board, the planning and design review board, sustainability and resilience, I think we could ask those folks to have discussions on their boards and come back to us and share their thoughts so we could take information from those two boards, perhaps from the attorneys, from staff as well, maybe the police department, and have a bigger conversation. I've talked to Gage about this. I've talked to Alex Bernhard about this, the chair of the Sustainability and Resilience Board, and they all sound like they'd be very happy to provide more information for us. Here's a quick list of the including but not limited to topics that these groups might discuss, and they could talk about anything else they want to as well. But we could see what other better communities have in their code regarding lighting. We could talk about public lighting. Because we have a hodgepodge of streetlights, to the point Judy just made a few minutes ago about 6th Avenue. Go around the village and you'll see lots of different streetlights, different intensities and temperatures and all that good stuff. For private exterior lighting, the topics might include landscaping, new types of exterior residential lighting that weren't on the market when our code was written. So this often happens, right? So code's written and you would never imagine someone would build a building as big as that one on 117th Street. And then it happens. And then you realize, oh, wow, we have no maximum height in the village. That's a problem. So then you go back and try to fix it. So there are lots of things there that we may want to discuss. including the intensity of light and the temperature of lights and the direction of exterior lighting. That is one thing that I will say residents complain to me about, is the direction of some of the residential lighting in the village where it's shooting out into the street and they feel like it's not aesthetically pleasing. They find it really annoying. And then, of course, there's the general impact of exterior lighting on animals and the environment. There's a whole movement, the dark skies movement. I don't know what you guys know about that, but about darkness is our friend, and we shouldn't be lighting up the world. We're impacting the world and environment and animals and nature by lighting things up too much. There are animals and insects and plants, quite frankly, that need darkness to go about their lives. So again, I don't think we need to have a big, I came up with that list. I just, when I tackle any topic, the way my brain works is I sit down with a spreadsheet and I think of every possible thing and I put them all down on a list because I want to include as many things into the conversation as possible. And I think if each of us did that and we asked our boards to do it, the planning board, the sustainability and resilience board, Mario can decide if any of his staff, he wants them to weigh in on this. Maybe our attorneys do some background for us as well, and give everyone a couple of months and maybe say, yeah, guys, we think this is important enough. Have conversations, please come back to us in January, February, give them time. They have things they need to do as well. And we're going to ask them to take on a project for us. Give them lots of time to get through it. It's not something that has to get fixed today. It's not a dangerous situation, but I think it is something that our village deserves to at least have a conversation about, if not possibly take steps forward to make things different, better, after we have enough information. So that's why I ask you guys to do tonight, is have a quick conversation and decide if we think it's an important enough topic to ask these other groups to come back to us.
Any of the other commissioners want to comment? Commissioner
Well,
Hazelwood?
I think you're going to end up with conflicting things. I think you're going to end up with the police wanting things brighter and sustainability wanting things darker. And, you know, you kind of have to balance things. So, but I mean, you're going to go around to your neighbors and tell them they need to shut their porch lights off. You know, you're upset about people with swale issues. People are going to be just as upset about being told what they can do with their lights. So it's a hot topic.
Well, are you saying it's a hot topic and we shouldn't tackle it because it's hot, or we should tackle it because it's knowing it's hot and we'll find our way through it? And look, the resolution, maybe we decide nothing at the end of it, but do you think, Judy, it's important enough that we should have the conversation?
We can have the conversation all you want. There's going to be pushback on all sides. But
Well, and
that's
you're
fine.
right, and you're right, and there's going to be conflicting information, but that's the whole point of getting the input from all the different groups, is we get all the information, we consider it all, and we look at it as a conglomerate and figure out what we want to do. But of course, we're going to get conflicts. Art, what do you think?
Any other discussion?
I think it's a good idea to talk about it. Absolutely.
I'm always good of talking about items. So yes, I think it's a good thing, but I do agree we're going to have a lot of conflicts. So the couple months will make a big difference.
Okay.
If I may just give a recommendation and see if the board is willing. This is one of the things that as manager, I have to try to manage is the capacity for projects and what our staff can and cannot do. And like I said in the prior item, we're spread pretty thin. If I may make the recommendation that allow the item to go to the various boards as Commissioner Kennedy mentioned. And then once there's a recommendation and the commission then discusses a direction in which they want us to research, then staff and legal can then look at that direction from the commission as opposed to just throwing it out there now, because there's so many different possibilities that we could be spending a lot of staff time and legal time on something that at the end of the day, the commission decides we don't want to touch. And so my recommendation and my request would be allow it to go through the boards. You guys have it as a formal discussion later, January, February, March, whatever the case may be. And then we will take the direction from the board, hey, research this, and then tell us what other cities, what we can do from a staff perspective, what can we do in the code perspective. That way we can kind of spread things out on our end, and we're researching something that's already with intent as opposed to just something vague.
That makes sense. Can I ask one little variation? Valerie, what's the easiest way to find out what other municipalities, what they have? I mean, I've gone through Municode and I've searched on word searches, but that's really it.
Yes, to go Muni code.
And just pull up,
Yep.
and you pull up, like, can you search in the state of Florida, all municipalities, or do you have to go to each? I have to pull up South Miami, I have to pull up Coral Gables. Well, that's a drag. I've done it with other things.
At least most of them, are on one website.
Yeah.
Not everybody has to go through Municode, but that's just been adopted as the.
Oh, I didn't know that. I go there. I go straight there anytime I want to research.
At least that I'm aware of. Cities aren't required to use.
Other publishing.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so I'm happy with what Mario said. We'll add sustainability and resilience and planning, design, and review board. I have to get used to their new name. It's very long. Ask both of them to start the conversation and ask them, but I would like to give them a goal of having something back to us for, would you guys agree to January or February? What would you be happy with? Ask them for January and see what they say.
I would
Depending on
say
how busy they are.
February because you got the holidays.
Well, they still meet in December. They have all their meetings. We could ask for January, but we're not holding them to anything. It's not a directive. Ask them if they could have something back in January, and if not, let us know when you can get it to us, but, and see what they come back with. They have October, all of October, November, December. That's 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, and the planning board meets twice a month and sustainability meets once a month, so.
Yeah.
Okay, we all cool with that? Do we need a motion or anything? We disagree?
I
Okay, cool.
think
Correction.
that's a
Yep.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Good idea. Okay, we'll go to discussion of old business. Permit fee schedule. Mario?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if you just give me 1 second so I can bring it up.
Yes.
Okay, so this was at the request of Commissioner Hammelberg to bring this item back based on the budget sessions that we had, and understanding that we may be in a shortfall for the building. Again, the permit fees and all have not been addressed since 2016, I believe was the earliest. And so we have many years of, I guess the word is inflation is the right word to use, and difference of costs and increase of costs for all the services that we have. Labor costs, hourly costs, all these things have increased. And for the most part, other municipalities have increased. And normally every year or every 2 years, they pass a master fee schedule to account for the change. So we have not done that since 2016, June of 2016. One of the residents had asked, why the municipalities that are listed in the comparison. When we first started doing the research, I sent out an email to all of our counterparts, and these were the ones that kind of responded and were easier to get the information on. The way that people have their fee schedules, some have just one sheet with everything, some don't, some it's just within the code, some it's within an internal document. And so we kind of narrowed it down as best as we could with what we could get. Regardless, not everybody calls the same fee the same thing, or their code requires certain fees and not fees that we have that they don't have, or vice versa, or anything like that. So we try to give the best. I think the best thing that I could do and have you take a look at is the initial proposal from Calvin Giordano's was with the new requirement of the state, which eliminates the ability to require contract documents to show the construction cost of whatever the person is getting the application for. to move into a fee schedule that is per square foot, which would help protect the total cost and give you a more substantial look at what the permit would be per the square foot of whatever the project renovation is. CAP has said, no, I think it's better if you just use it as a percentage of the construction costs. When I asked, well, wait a minute, what are we going to do with regards to the state statute that doesn't allow us to get, those contracts? You have them sign an affidavit saying that this is, an accurate description of what the project costs will be. And then when we start looking at the plans, if they tell us it's $1 and we see it's $1 million construction, we're going to have a problem there. So they use that affidavit in many cities that they represent. And so we have that. And so I gave you in the Biscayne Park proposed fee schedule PDF 2022-23. You would see where some is the difference between what CGA, Calvin Giordano, or CAP proposed. A lot stays around the same, but then you see the percentage, 3% of the job, including any of the review fees and stuff like that, or 2.5% of what the job is. Well, percentages are great. Thanks. That might make it easier for the discussion, but what does that mean for our residents? And so what I did is I pulled 6 examples of different permits, and I tried to be able to show you what the current, I took out all the contact information. These are actual permits, but I took out all the contact information and for that property. And I showed you what the current total for that would be and what under the new system it would look like, right? One main difference is $125. That is an upfront cost. That's not calculated into all the permit costs because it's credited towards the total permit, which that when you look at the example, I kind of called it not calculated. Right now, I just brought up example 3. Let me see if I can bring up. Yeah, and I'll put it on Zoom for our residents as well. So, Madam Mayor, I apologize if you just give me one additional moment. Little tricky.
Which example you have? Example 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, and 2.
3 is currently what I'm looking at.
Plumbing, right?
Just give me 1 second. Let me bring it up so that the public can also see what we're talking about. I'm going to share the screen. Here. Share. Okay, so this is an example of a plumbing permit. Again, I took out all the information pertaining to who has this permit, but it's an actual example. So currently under this construction project, this plumbing permit today cost $1,325.36. Under the proposed change by CAP, which is percentage based, certain things go up, certain things don't change because they're surcharge and it's formula by the county or the state or something like that. And so the change based on percentage would go to $1,497.78. So in this example, it's not a major increase on the permit that we have. But I also wanted to show you and give you an example. I went all the way back. Give you an example where what does that show? And I think it's example number 1. which is a building permit, and it's a new construction for a new single-family home, right? So this is a brand-new building that we're looking at. The current permit is 6,736, and under the new calculated with the percentage, it jumps up to 11,388. Now, again, for new construction, the majority of the time, we're talking about contractors, investors, and things like that. Ultimately, residents end up paying, whether it's through their contractor or directly. It all kind of depends, but everything's going to change, and it depends on the project cost. And so I gave you 6 examples that we can look at, and now I can walk through them. So again, the public can see what those changes are, and I'll try to answer any questions. Another building permit, adding an additional living space and bathrooms, that changed from 2269 to 37. So not that big of a jump compared to brand new construction. And just, I think there's,
I'm sorry, go back to that. That seemed like a very big jump to me.
sure.
We're talking a change from, what is that, 2270 to 3762.
Right.
Roughly 50%.
Yeah, that's very big.
Again, when compared to brand new construction, it's,
Yeah, I understand that.
which I caveat. I mean, it's, and it's just, it depends on what the project is, right? So in this project, they're doing additional living space and adding additional bathrooms, right? So it all depends on the cost of the construction and everything that's going on. And so if it's a $12,000 job, it's calculated as a percentage of the 12,000. If it's $1,000 job, then it's a percentage based off of the $1,000. And so that's what's going to dictate what that major change is.
Mario, I have a procedural question.
Sure.
A lot of our fees are based on the actual cost of the project, right? So if something costs $800 as opposed to $8,000, the fee would be different, right? So currently, when someone puts in an application, is there a validation process? Is there a verification process, or do we just take the person's or whomever is submitting one of these things, the word for it?
For the most part, I believe it's been taking their word for it. CAP just provided me with an affidavit for them to sign, which is what we're implementing, and asking them, sign this, get it notarized. And as a state licensed contractor, if they lie on it, then they're risking their license.
Yeah, but like residents will pull their own permits as well, right? So they have the capability.
Even if they pull their own permit, they still, a resident, for example, the example that I have up in screen is a new AC unit, right? So even though a resident can pull to the permit to do the AC, still is going to require a company to come and do that. And so with the affidavit, they're saying, again, that this is the.
Well, everybody's going to be required to submit an affidavit. I'm just
Yeah.
concerned that, we've probably lost a lot of money over the years
Possibly.
based on the fact that,
Possibly. I know, in some cases, I believe I've had conversations with some of the former inspectors from Calvin Giordano when they were reviewing plans, and they're like, there's no way this project is $100,000. This is a $300,000 job, And so they'll go back and they'll reach out and say, like, we need to, before we need to see the contract documents that show it's a $100,000 job, right? Now it's more like, are you sure your estimate's correct? Because based on current, but it doesn't look XYZ. So the affidavit gives that extra layer of reassurance that a contractor is not going to lie because his license could be in jeopardy by giving false documentation to the governmental agency.
Can you explain what the affidavit is asking them to sign? What are they saying?
That the project cost is an accurate description of the job.
And who's signing it? The property owner or the contractor or both?
Whoever the applicant is.
Whoever the applicant is. So if I get a resident, an owner permit, then I have to sign it. But if I send my electrician in to pull a permit, he has to sign it.
Right, but remember, even if you're a resident, you pull it, you're not going to be doing the installation of the AC unit or a lot of the work. A lot of times, that's just a way for the job to be cheaper because the contractor may add an additional X amount to cover the permit plus their time to take out a permit.
Some contractors won't go pull permits. They say, you pull it or I'm not going to do the job.
Right.
So the affidavit, and how close to that, to the actual price do they have to be? Because we can never verify it.
From my understanding, we can no longer ask for the contracts
Right.
documents,
Or any bills,
But-
anything that shows.
but
money.
our plan reviewers, they know what the market rate is for concrete, for ACs, for steel, for all of that. So they can say just in material alone, even if you do labor, in material alone, if it's a $200,000 job and you're telling us it's 100,000, there's no way you're doing that. And they can say, no, you need to show us and go back to that.
So that's my next question. What can we ask them? How do we call them out on the BS?
That's just during the regular plan review and stuff like that.
I mean, do we have recourse? If someone brought in plans and said this house costs $100,000 and we knew for a fact it was going to cost 300.
The affidavit, if they're lying on that affidavit, then they could be jeopardizing their state
Their
license.
license, right? But what do we do when we see this isn't kosher? What do we do?
The reality is that we really don't have much recourse.
No, that's
I
what my
mean,
point is.
we're asking them to sign an affidavit, but really we will never
work
really
with them.
know.
Can legal give us an opinion on this?
I mean, for the most part, we're going to end up working with them because we want to give everybody their permits and to move forward and everything like that. So in the past, we've gone back and forth with them. I was like, hey, based on the market rates for all the materials and stuff, it doesn't look like this is an accurate number. Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Oh yeah, sorry about that. Here you go. And it's like, okay. And so we end up working with them. I don't know that the village has ever gone after someone, and I don't know what other cities have done, maybe in large developments where there's millions of thousands, millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line for improvement fees and things like that. But in our case, I don't think we'll get to a point where someone turned in the affidavit and then we'll go. It does help us so that we can better do the permit fee assessment on it. But for the most part, it's just working with them and getting the back and forth correct.
So the only thing that really changes is we have them sign an affidavit now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then again, it's just if you all are comfortable with the percentage fee as opposed to just the hard number where we have now, which when you look at what the market is, we're really, really low compared to everybody else, even around us. If we look at where everybody is, and I'd like to get something where we can update our numbers or whatever the case may be, and then now be able to track this so that every 2 years at least, something comes back in front of the commission, say, hey, do we need to adjust these prices or not? And at least you all have, as a board, have an opportunity to say, let's leave it as is. Things are going well. We're meeting what we need to cover building and so forth. Or yeah, things have really skyrocketed. We need to make that adjustment this year, or we need to even lower it next year. The good thing with the percentage base, which is what Cap showed, is it takes a lot of that kind of calculation out of it, because if the cost of projects go down because materials or inflation goes down, well, 2.5% of that just means a lower amount. And if the cost of the projects and the materials and everything goes up 2.5%, that cost is going to go up or down depending on what the market bears already. So it's not like you have to constantly every year be like, oh, market's up, we need to increase, market's down, we need to lower it. It does it automatically because you're looking at it as a percentage basis as opposed to a fixed dollar amount.
I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. First of all, how many, this I should have asked you before I put you on the spot. In the last fiscal year that we just ended, how many permits roughly do we issue all total? Do you have any idea?
If you give me 1 second.
Because guys, here's my other. thought.
So in,
Go ahead.
yeah, in, let me get it because I do have it as part of the RFP for CAP. So if you just give me a moment, I'll bring that up.
Because here's where I'm going with it, guys. And tell me, Mario, if this number is accurate. We're putting $26,000 from the general fund into the building department to float it. That's what we're budgeted for this coming fiscal year, right?
Correct. It's about
Yeah.
26,000.
So 26,000. So really it's, remember, the building department functions as a separate entity and it's supposed to be a break even thing. And that's why we have to feed it just to make sure it breaks even. So what we're really trying to do is not do that anymore, is to have the fees really cover it between the fees and the split. Because now when we take money out of the general fund, that's everybody's money. That's yours, mine, and everybody's. That's everybody's money is being used to fund that department. Whereas the people who are supposed to be funding the department are the people who are pulling permits and doing work. So that's the other fix that we're trying to make. I mean, one way or the other, it's getting paid and it's either everybody's money or it's the people's money who are actually getting the work done. So if we need to come up with $26,000, that's really what we need, is to figure out a way to come up with $26,000 to make this be a break-even department. For that
We
reason,
actually also need to think about continuing to digitize things because we got things started and then we didn't fund it again for this year.
is that in
So,
building?
yeah, digitizing building records is in building, and that's something we have not
Of
done
administration.
in this, no.
So
That's building.
what Commissioner Hammelberg is referring to, yeah, the last fiscal year, we spent $50,000 to start digitizing the old records that we had. And we still have, we started with a room in Village Hall. We still have about 2 or 3 rooms in the rec center. Because we were going to be in a shortfall, I did not recommend, and you all agreed, to not fund that project this upcoming year because we could have a shortfall. If we were to build up to budget, then it would be not a 26,000, but a 76,000. And so that would be taking away from other projects. And it's one of those calculations of, okay, where do we start looking at what's going to come first and what's going to come second? So we have already transitioned over to OpenGov, which is going to be better than the BSNA system that we've had. And all of that would already be digitalized moving forward. It's doing all the old documents. And a lot of times, some of these old documents are from even before 2000. Some of that comes to what is the mandatory record retention for some of these documents. A lot of it, we could probably get rid of.
Someone has to check all of that as well.
Someone would have to check, but I know that there's a history in the village that residents will call and I need to see my permit from 1997 when I did my roof and I don't have it. And when you start talking about purging documents, it becomes a very contentious feeling.
So here's where I was going with all of that. When we talk about what other communities are charging, it's an interesting thing to look at, but it doesn't, that's where I get stuck because at the end of the day, what do we care what they charge? Because what we're trying to do is to get a department to pay for itself. And if we have to charge more or we can charge less, I don't see why we're trying to match what other municipalities are doing. They're a whole different animal. Some of them have a whole lot of commercial areas that are being developed, and that's a whole different animal. Some of them are much bigger than we are. They have much bigger staffs. We have to cover what we have to cover. So that's my concern, is getting us where this village needs to be. And at the end of it, when we're done, and then we compare and say, oh, look, we charge more than another one. Well, we have to, because we operate this way, or we charge less. So knowing what they charge now doesn't really interest me nearly as much as how do we get to where we need to get? Because we know we have our budget. We know what we need to do. And to Judy's point, if we want to get some more money in there for digitization, then we need to get more than the 26. So
Yeah.
that's where I fall on this. It's the comparison thing that,
Yeah, the comparison, Commissioner, is to give you all an idea of where we stand in the market and what do other cities do in similar situations.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's not to
Okay.
tell you that, hey, look.
we should be charging this much.
Right, it's more of
Understood,
what
okay.
the market bears. Okay, well, then what is the market?
Yeah.
Right? Are we too high? Are we too low? Are we right in the middle? That gives you kind of a sense of, can we do more or can we do less?
But again, it's about where we need to be. We're
Correct.
too high, we're too low, we're
But
where
how
we
much?
are.
Yeah.
We're where we are.
How much?
The other thing is doing it on percentage. Here's what also concerns me. As things fluctuate, our amount changes. So as the cost of, I'll just give an extreme example. Right now, the cost of materials is really high. If it were to drop, things get better and whatever. And now all the costs of all these jobs come down. How much we're going to make is going to reduce as well, but we still have a job to do over there. We still have a department to run. Now, the vendor, that changes on their side as well. So they're still putting in all the work and they get the same percentage split of a smaller number. So if prices came down, then our portion of the split comes down. If it's based on percentage. If prices come down, then the permit amounts come down. Our split remains the same percentage, but the dollar amount comes down. It comes down for the vendor, but we still have a department to run over there as well.
Yeah,
I'd
the-
like a
the
little more
fixed-
control over it than that, maybe.
Yeah, the fixed costs, and to answer your prior, so in fiscal year 2018, there were a total of 560 permits that were done. In 19, it was 332. In 2020, 392, 21, 541. And then as of May of 2022, it was 316. I believe I'll double check with where we are with SB, but I believe we'll be close to that 540 number or even surpass it for 2022 fiscal year. Permits, yeah. Yeah. No, that's what the average has been for us. And so for the most part, it fluctuates between 2018 was 300,000, 2019 was 170. That's when we started with COVID and shutting down. 2020, a little bit picked up to 213,000. And that this is all the cost from the permits.
One project will have multiple permits, right?
Yeah, all
So-
of that. No, these are total permits and stuff like that. Yeah.
Then doesn't the village have a threshold? What is it, $100 or something like that? Anything above, you have to pull a permit, right? Isn't that?
We changed that.
But
Didn't we change that from $100?
We discussed it. We didn't do it. No.
No, yeah, it stayed. I don't think there's anything really that's under $100 that you can do.
My point, right?
Yeah.
So that may be something we need to talk about too.
But we had discussed it before because I paid a $97 or $100 fee for a permit for $100 worth of work, and I had a major objection to that.
Yeah.
As well, you should. And that's why I brought it up once before. I suggested that we raise it up to $1,000. I remember saying you can't get out of Home Depot with a bag full of screws for $100. So
The issue was what requires a building permit
Mhm.
dictated by the Florida Building Code, not the value. So you can waive the fee, but they are still required to get a permit depending on the type of work that is being performed.
Plumbing, electric, all that.
Yeah, and then
Electrical is going to fall under Florida Building Codes. That's going to require a permit. If you want to waive it.
Valerie, you're not being heard over here.
Sorry. If you would like to bring it right here. Like to waive the fee, that's one thing, but you can't waive the obligation to get the permit because that's required under.
and the big issue is you still have to pay the vendor for all that. So we could waive the fee, but that just means that anything under whatever that threshold would be, the village is supplementing that cost. Because you still got to get the plan review, you still got to pay for the plan review, you still got to pay for the inspection and all that kind of stuff. So if
So what's our
Yeah.
budget? What's the budget for the building department?
this fiscal year, okay, I will bring that up.
Oh, just,
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Budget fiscal year 23. Reading. So the total building, we're anticipating, we have the balance. This is where the theory and some of the discussion happened. So we budget conservatively. And so essentially half of what we've seen the year before is what we budget for. And so we're budgeting for like 175,000.
does that include our 26?
Yes,
170?
175.
Oh, 175.
Now we anticipate getting more than that, and that might lower needing to
300, about $400 per permit that we need in order to get to that
right. Right. I think if anything, especially with a new contractor, it's shown, I think we definitely need to address the permit fees. And I appreciate that the commissioner was willing to have this conversation again. I do like the idea of the percentage because again, it allows the market to go up or down and it helps. Yes, there might be an opportunity where the cost that we receive also goes down, but then the cost that goes to the contractor goes down as well. Our fixed cost is the software that we need to pay for and our building clerk. And those two things are our hard cost within the department. After that, everything just kind of depends on
Inspectors.
how much goes towards the vendor. And that all depends on what the market is, right? And so that kind of will fluctuate, but that just depends on the individual permit.
So Mac, we need to get about $400 per permit in order to cover the $170,000 on the budget, right?
I didn't do that math.
Yeah, that's what we need. So based on 450 permits, about $400. So I guess the question that I would like to have an idea is, what is the average cost of a permit currently?
Everything's going to depend on the project. There's no
All over
standard.
the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place. The way that
What is the
Percentage.
majority that you see coming through? Is it like
it's,
below $400? Is it at $400?
no, it's definitely more than that. But it all just depends. I mean, the way, again, right now, the way our fee schedule for electrical, for example,
Mhm.
we have to count how many outlets there are and charge them per outlet. Then we have to charge what kind of voltage it is. We have to charge if it's for, TV outlets and phone outlets, and it's a $3 charge for this and a $2 charge for that.
Who does all of those calculations?
SB for
Okay, so
every
that's
single
internal.
permit.
That's
that
not
goes
over a
in.
cap. That's,
No, that's us.
so if we did it this way, it would save a lot of staff time as well.
It would, because it just says, okay, your electrical project is
How much is it going to cost?
$100,000. It's
affidavit.
two. Exactly.
Here's your percentage. That's your
And that's
permit.
taken out. Exactly. I mean, the review doesn't change. They're going to say, okay, it's
Yeah.
100 outlets. Does it meet? Okay, this all meets the Florida building code.
Florida
Okay, we're
building
fine.
code.
Right. And,
Right.
but the application still specifies all of that information. It says 100 outlets and 14
It
switches.
requires all that.
All of that's
but
on there. We're just
per-
not
For
charging
the
by it.
fee, right, for the fee portion, it just simplifies.
But there's still our fixed costs, right, Mario?
Mhm.
Okay, so the application process, there's a fixed cost, right? For the application, just submitting an application, there's a fixed cost to that, right?
There's an admin fee that right now it's $20.
Mhm.
Our charge for that, our hourly rate essentially is much higher than $20. So I'm recommending we put it to 60. There's other fees that the county requires and things like that. Those aren't changing. What's,
Sorry, back up. You said you want to increase the admin fee from 25 to 60?
from 20 to 60.
From 20 to 60. See, that worries me. I'm thinking about the big jobs, new construction.
It's just one $60. It's not a
I
percentage
understand.
or
I
a
understand.
multiplier.
Yeah, I understand.
The cost of our admin clerk, when you look at her hourly rate plus all the other incidentals, it's much more than $20 per hour.
I understand that. What I'm saying is for the big jobs, it doesn't phase me. I'm thinking about the resident going in and pulling a permit for one little job. Judy, what did you have your permit pulled for? It was something small, right? You brought up an example.
The fascia board, yeah, when the
But we
truck
still
pulled
had-
the wire.
We still had staff go through it. We still had staff have to fee it out. We still had staff have to put it and all that. So
But a lot of that's
we
gonna
still
come
have the
down
work
now.
that go.
But the feeing it out will be a whole lot less. work
Regard-
Because it's a percentage of the affidavit amount, not all.
But
that
it's not
adding up.
it's not just for feeing it out. It's for moving that permit along and pushing everything through. Yes, it's gone from a manual to an electrical or electronic process, but it's not a full AI where there's no human interaction. There's still a lot of things in the back end that per application staff still has.
I understand. I understand. I'm just thinking about the average resident going in for a small thing and their fee went from $20 to $60 before they even start. And it's a job that's not going to cost that much.
So
What about this? What about if we, and just spitballing here,
Mhm.
what if the percentage wasn't a flat percentage across everything? What if there were different percentages for different kinds of things? The big stuff is a higher percentage, the smaller stuff is a
So the
lower
building
percentage.
fee, yeah, the building fee's at 3%. Everything else, which is plumbing, electrical, and some of those things is basically 2.5%. So that's where you're seeing the difference there. If you want to put it at 2%, look, you can all kind of put it where you all feel comfortable.
We
and
just have to
we
get
can
to the
definitely
same
do it.
number, the right number at the end of the day.
And you're not going to know what that final right number is because each project is going to be different, right? And so the problem you then get to is if we have, we're trying to standardize, and that's what we're trying to do with what's being recommended is just doing something that is simple and is a standard. It's like, yes, everything is essentially outside of a structural or a building, everything is essentially 2.5. And so that makes everything very simple. You can put that into the formula to do the feeing within the computer, and it makes it very simple to go through. When you start, well, for this type of electrical, it's 1.5%, but for this one, it's 4%. And for this type of project, it starts complicating everything, and it just means more work on top.
Of the staff time that we saved by.
You're completely
percentage,
throwing
we
it
kinda
out.
wiped it out.
Yeah.
It just seems to me if we're going to save a lot of staff time if we do it this way.
so
Where they're pricing it out is going to be dramatically different.
listen, I'm sure
You're
there's a lot-
saving it in one area, but it's still being eaten up in other areas because it's not just an automatic process. Staff still needs to move a permit from beginning through the end. And if it has to go to planning, they push all of that stuff and it's putting all of that together. So it's not just hey, this is
Certain fixed
a
things that aren't.
15-minute, yeah.
Get it. I-
Usually each permit she's working, I'm not going to even throw out a number because I haven't talked to her about it, but it's definitely more than an hour per permit.
So, to Mac's point about residents, I mean, listen, I'm sure there's residents here that do a lot of work and pull a lot of permits and probably know what what they're being charged and all that. But the couple of permits that I pulled, I had no idea. I mean, I would have paid whatever they told me because, that's the fee. So I don't know how much of an impact, that's going to have on the overall population, to be quite honest. And the reality is that we need, we need the funds to make that department whole.
I wish there was a way for us to, how do I say this without maybe saying something I shouldn't say? I wish there was a way to weigh it more for the big stuff.
Well, and
less-
that's
Go ahead, Judy.
That's exactly what I said when you wanted me to not say anything, is I thought that maybe we could weigh it a little bit less for like a roofing permit and a septic permit, because I think we have people who have some financial issues, and, you know, a couple thousand extra could be harder for them. So I think some of the basic things, if we could weigh it a little bit lighter, might be easier on them. But I think overall, we do need to think about updating it.
Well, we have to update. We don't have to think
Yeah.
about it. We got to do it. Yeah, I just wish there was a way to, the big jobs, the big heavy things, the developers that are doing ground up construction. Look, Art, to your point, some people won't notice and other people will. It depends on their certain circumstances. But, you know, for some people for people who are developing a property and flipping it, they're the ones that are, they don't care because they're not paying it anyway. They're going to pass it on to whoever they're sell it to.
I understand, but if you're talking about, let's say, $1 million project and you're at 3%, whatever, I mean, just throwing out a number there. And then you have a small project at 3%. I mean, you're really hitting the big guy really hard, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but
It's a percentage, so you're hitting everyone equally, actually.
Yeah, no, I understand, but when you're talking about $1 million, 3% is a lot, is a big hit, right? Compared to someone that's doing $1,000 job, right? So I don't see the correlation there. I don't.
Because I think, and we don't know for every circumstance, but I think for the $1,000 job, I'm doing something in my house, it's my home and it's my money and I'm paying it. A developer, the $1 million job, they're passing it on to whomever, they're not paying it. They might be writing the check now, but they're not paying it at the end of the day. Someone else is paying it. That's the difference.
So what I may recommend for the commission, you all have the item, maybe look at that comparison chart again, and make your notes, you know, for this type of bill, or this type of project, electrical or whatever, you know, CAP has that recommendation. You'd prefer to see a different amount, you know, and then we can do a comparison and maybe come to a consensus in November or thereafter, so that we can then kind of formalize what that's going to look like. Again, I don't recommend going and having different percentages too much on too many things, because it just complicates everything. And I think 2%, 2.5%, 3% is very fair with what things cost and where we are and what the market is. But, you know, it's up to the commission. So I think if the commission will take that recommendation of take a look at that spreadsheet and then jot down what you want, so that at the next meeting we can try to come to a consensus and then we can build for first reading off of that. Does that sound reasonable?
I'm good with that. I understand the whole topic a whole lot better having had this conversation. So I'd like to sit down with you and dig into it a little bit more before we decide on anything.
Okay, is there any other discussion on that? The next one is windows and doors codification. Mac, you wanted to discuss that?
But we're not hearing Mac.
I'm sorry. I said I brought it to us and I presented this a long time ago. It's coming back now from Planning, Design and Review Board, whatever they're called. So Mario, do you want to do it?
I can give you the very quick. There have been a few different scenarios where, unfortunately, a resident will purchase windows or whatnot before it gets approval. But the idea was, the idea behind everything is that the code was very vague on what was allowed or what could be brought to the planning, and a lot of things could change. So, Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was you wanted a little bit more of a parameter around what should be accepted so that people can properly plan their projects and their windows and their sizes and things like that, as opposed to they come in and then, oh, I don't like this size, you should have it 2 inches wider or 2 inches taller or something like that. So the idea was, and the discussion was taken back to planning, and they've made a recommendation to be able to codify the styles and colors of windows and doors and so forth, so that there's a little bit more structure around, so that anybody, whether it's a developer or a resident, they have something to work around. Was that a good characterization?
Yeah, that's it. And just interestingly, last night I got a call from a resident about how do I make sure I'm on the meeting or something, and I directed her to staff. And she said, because my windows are sitting in my garage ready to install. And I said, but you don't have a permit yet. And she said, no. And I said, well, if you don't have a permit, that means you didn't get approved by planning and zoning. How do you know your windows are approved? So it happened again, because if you look at our code now, there's nothing that says windows have to be this, this, and this, and people move forward faster than they should. So this is really about protecting residents and providing the information they need before they get to that point. And I also see people going through planning and zoning, planning design and review board several times because they didn't have the information. They have to go back again and again. So at any rate, they came back to us with their recommendations. So I guess we're going to discuss them now.
Yeah, and if you give me a moment, what I'll do is I will share that screen as well so that everybody can see the recommendation. It is part of your packet.
And while you're finding it, let me just thank the board because they did a really good job. We gave them a topic and we basically said, would you write code for us? And they're the ones that see it come through, and they know what they're aiming for. So they wrote code that gets us to where the village needs to be. So they did a really good job on this.
And I apologize, my computer is sluggish today. Okay, so now I just have to share my screen. Okay. Oh, no, slow down. So the recommendation and the language is proposed within the memo, which is part of your overall agenda. They're recommending that exterior doors and windows shall be consistent style, type, and color. Windows type shall be limited to fixed horizontal roller casement and single hung. Horizontal rollers and single hung window type shall not be combined on street facing elevations. B, exterior doors and windows shall be constructed of aluminum or wood and shall have received a notice of acceptance from Miami-Dade County. They limit the colors to white, bronze, silver, or black. And then they have some various different, with regards to impact or non-impact of what it would look like. Showing here, every bedroom must have at least one egress window installed and open, must have a minimum of 20 inches wide, 24 high, total opening size of 5.7 square feet. And that looks like it is everything. Don't think it's too drastic of a change of anything. I don't know if it was the full intent, Commissioner, of more of the parameters that you were looking for.
Well, I was looking to see what they would suggest because they have there's a certain look they try to accomplish, and I just want to have code that gets them there. So I have a couple of questions, and actually it's not that many. They did a really nice job on this, but I wish someone were here. So how do we do this? Do we have a conversation? And if we want to ask them for clarification on something, do we send it back with the questions we want to ask them, or ask them to watch this conversation, or how do we handle that? Because I have some questions.
Yeah, if you want to send the item back, we could send the item back.
With questions?
They're typically limited on how many items they can have on their agenda. So, and we're throwing quite a bit of stuff on them right now, so it might be a little bit before it comes back. But yeah, we can definitely send the item back. Yep.
You guys have any questions before I jump in on mine? No, Judy, are you good?
No, I think they've done a pretty good job of it.
Okay, so 10.3.3A is an apple. The very beginning says exterior doors and windows shall be of consistent style, type, and color. First of all, that makes it sound like the doors and windows have to be the same style, type, and color. And I'm not certain I'm not sure if that's what they intended that to mean, but that's how I read it. Do you guys read it that way? Like the doors have to match the windows. It says doors and windows shall be of consistent style, type, and color. My front door has nothing to do with the windows in my house, for example. That would mean if you put impact windows in, your door would have to be the same style, type, and color as the windows. I know, and I'm not certain that's what they meant. It doesn't.
And we can ask them to clarify.
Yeah, that,
Okay.
them to clarify
So
that.
that's the first thing I would like clarification on, is that what that consistency means. Because doors really aren't addressed anywhere in here. This whole thing is exterior window, doors and windows, but then it's really, it says doors and windows, but it's really mainly about, it's more about windows than it is doors. Okay, it also says something about street facing, on street facing elevations, horizontal rollers and single hung window types shall not be combined, but you could combine the other ones. I think that makes sense, but I want to make sure that's what they meant. There are a bunch of types of windows that are not listed here. It's very clear that we allow horizontal roller, fixed casement, and single hung, but there are other types of windows, and I wonder why we wouldn't allow some of those. Because some of them even come in, I did a little bit of Googling, dangerous, I know, but some of them even come in impact variety. So I was wondering why some of them aren't in there as well. I'd like to hear them. I'm going to try to attend their next meeting, or the meeting when they discuss this, so I can be there and hear it for myself. 10.3.3B as in boy, it talks about materials, and it says aluminum or wood only. And again, there are other kinds of materials, and fiberglass, for example, I wonder why they wouldn't include fiberglass. And then something that's not addressed in here is window tinting. And I wondered if that should be a consideration. Because windows come in different, the glass, I'm talking about the glass, comes in different colors, and then you can get different amount of transparency on the window, and it's not addressed anywhere in here at all. And I wonder if maybe it should be considered. I'd like to hear them discuss the tinting of windows specifically, because you can also get mirrored windows. I've seen that, and I wonder if we want to allow that. Maybe that needs to be addressed as well. A tint percentage, certain colors that are allowed to be in the tint. Because are we concerned that the glass should be transparent, that the glass should be clear? Because you can get windows that are so dark that you can't see into them, light doesn't come in or out, and then there's the mirrored glass as well. Here's a question for Valerie. Are municipalities allowed to require impact windows? I was kind of surprised when I found out that you would allow someone to put non-impact windows in.
I don't
Sure.
know offhand, but I don't believe that is a requirement.
Yeah, I know.
You would have to shutter them.
I
Well, I'm
know.
going to bring that up next, Judy. I just wondered if
If they're
especially
not
in-
impact, you would have to shutter them. That's Miami-Dade. And that
So
might
I'm-
be South Florida building code, but I know that's Miami-Dade.
So I'd love to know if it's allowed to be required. I'm not suggesting we should require it, but I'd just be curious. Now, there's ambiguous wording on the information form that's not in the code. So what Judy just said, it says on the form, the third section down says, if non-impact windows or doors are being installed, then shutters must be used and 2 copies of product control approval must also be submitted. Now, this is the information form that they're provided when they come in to get the permit. This is a form that the board, by the way, they went the extra mile and they created this form that would be a handout when someone comes in for a window or door permit. They'd be handed this to make sure they're doing it the right way. But that's not addressed in the code. So if we're going to, I read that to say you have to install shutters if you're putting non-impact windows in, which would require a separate permit, I would think, right? And they'd have to go through the whole process, wouldn't they, Mario?
They would have to go through the process.
Because that's not in the code. So should that be in the code? It doesn't say in the code anywhere that, impact or non-impact, and non-impact requires shutters, and shutters have to be whatever they are. I don't know about shutters.
I don't know. it could be something that's required by the Florida Building Code. I'm not sure. what
Okay,
that
I think we
information-
better look into that because it's on the form, but not in the code.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that, but educated assumption here, I don't think you can require someone to put an impact type of product on the home. If someone doesn't want to do it, then they don't have to do it.
What about the
think-
shutters with non?
Now, the question is, can you require someone to install the windows and have shutters for them? I believe with new construction buildings or new development areas throughout Dade County, if it's not impact windows, then when you purchase the home, the developer has to provide shutters for all the windows.
What about if
But
someone's replacing their?
But that's the question.
Okay.
Does that apply when someone's just replacing the windows,
Yes.
and they're not? So that's something that
Yes.
we'll have to double check and.
Okay. Okay, they're going to double check that for us, Judy. It's just interesting that it's on the form that would be handed out, but it's not in the code. So if it is in fact required, maybe that needs to be in the code somewhere. And then there's nothing here about doors, except what I mentioned before about doors and windows must be of consistent style, type, and color. I wonder how doors should be addressed, because maybe that wording's just not exactly right, and maybe that's not what they intended, but it sure sounds like it when I read it, and I wonder what else what other code we want to have about doors specifically. Those are my comments. So those are things that I'm not asking for all of that. I would like clarification on that and some more opinion back from the
Yeah, the
board.
doors have to be different. They don't have to be the same style as the windows. That's kind of, doesn't make sense.
And if they could also provide clarification on what quote notice of acceptance from Miami-Dade County is referring to.
Where is that?
It comes with a product approval from the county. When I did my windows, and it was about 22 pages on each type of window.
Is that what you're looking at, Valerie?
And I had a big packet from the county on what was acceptable. I think the company has to do engineering studies. I mean, it was a whole big thing.
Okay, so we're gonna take all those notes and send it back to the board and ask them to clarify, and then I'll try to attend their meeting so I can hear them discuss it as well. Board, if you're listening, thank you again.
Okay, so any other comments on that?
No.
Okay, shingle roof requirements, shingle roof memo. Mario?
Again, this was an item that the commission requested the board to take a look at, because the concern was that although shingled roofs are not allowed, there's an exception within the code that if an engineer says your structure can't hold the weight of the other types of roof, you can have a shingled roof. And so the concern was anybody could grab somebody, even an internet engineer, to write a letter. And so their recommendation, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but it's within your backup and it's on there. But essentially their recommendation was the planning board reviewed this item, and their recommendations are follow. The engineer must be a structural engineer licensed in the state of Florida. Visual in-person inspection by an engineer is required. An engineer's report must be submitted, including photos. The engineer's report must be presented in person to the planning board. The board shall review, question, and vote to accept the report. So for the most part, it looks like they're just asking for 4 requirements to be included. I think it all makes sense. My only concern, and going back to the discussion of the permit fees, if we're concerned with increasing, even talking about going from $20 to $60, the cost that all of this would end up costing for all of this, and someone coming in and all that, I don't know how that would play out. I don't know if there's any legal concerns that might come in by this area. But, you know, it's just something for you all to kind of consider as well.
Good point.
You guys are okay with all of this? Okay, so I'm. Yeah. We require an engineer's report now. We're just not saying prove to us what kind of an engineer they are and that they're even credentialed to do it. So we're just kind of making sure they're someone who knows what they're talking about. So at any rate, I'm fine with number one. And number two, number four, the engineer's report must be presented in person to the planning board. It's a little ambiguous there. Are they saying they want the engineer at the planning board meeting, or that someone has to come and present it in person rather than just email it to the village and say add it as backup? So that wasn't clear to me. It says the engineer's report must be presented in person. It doesn't say by whom. If they intend that to be the engineer, that might be a bit much, but I'd like to ask them what they intended on that. And it just says an engineer's report must be submitted, including photos, but it doesn't say what they're looking for in the report. I'm not a roofer. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I don't know what measurements you would be looking for in a report. Is a report just something saying, hey, I looked at it, here are some pictures, and I'm telling you it can't support the weight of a tile roof? Or are they looking for measurements, some physics, some drawings? I'd like to know what it is they want in that report, because we might find ourselves in the same place where someone's saying, you asked for a report, there's a report. I'm an engineer. I prove to you that I'm an engineer. What do you want? So if we're going to ask for a report and they want to see specific things, we might want to make sure that we're clear about that, what that is. They added a final paragraph on there about excluding 3-tab asphalt shingles into this, and I think that's a good idea as well.
Any other discussion on that?
So the fact that the engineer is licensed in the state of Florida, I think is critical. Instead of getting somebody from out of state on the internet. Visual person inspection by the engineer. I don't know how you're going to verify that happened. You're going to take a picture of the engineer in front of the house. So that's fine to be there, but it can and cannot happen.
You'd think they wouldn't sign a report that says they were there in person.
You're in Miami now. You're not in Kansas any longer. An engineer's report must be submitted, including photo. That's fine. And then the engineer's report must be presented in person to the planning board. That doesn't mean that the engineer has to present it. That's clear to me. You know, it just has to be presented to the planning
Right,
board.
I wonder if that's what the planning board intended that to mean.
I think, I'm not going to say, but I think.
Because it could be presented by anybody, I guess, the owner, anybody.
Yeah, as long as the other criterias are met, then, you know, that I think that's.
It makes me wonder, Art, why, if it's not the engineer, why would they, like, if I came in and said, here's my engineer's report, they could, not like they could ask me a question that I could answer. So I wondered why they would want just anybody there presenting the report. It
Well-
sounds to me like the intent is they might want the engineer there in case they have questions. I don't know.
Back to what our attorney just said,
No.
the cost is going to be, I mean, we're talking about $20 and $60. Now you want an engineer to show up at a public meeting?
I'm just questioning the
That's-
words
yeah.
on the paper. That's
No, I get it, but I just think that that's too much of a burden to ask. But yeah, listen, at the end of the day, we can go back to them and ask them to clarify that, but I think that that's their intent. Planning board, yeah.
They should have all the information on the reports. We really need.
Well, to Mac's point also, there should be a criteria to the report. It can't be just, yeah, I saw it and it doesn't hold the weight. There's got to be more detail from an engineer. You would think that if an engineer puts a report together, there would be, you know, details in that report. But the question is, do they have a criteria? Are we giving them, this is the criteria that you have to meet in order to move forward with this project? I don't know if that's the case. And if it's not the case, then maybe we need to put a criteria together and say, these are the things that you need to present us in order for us to, allow the asphalt roof. And then that way it's simple. It's the same for everybody. It's not, one person brings in one report, one person brings in another report, one person talks about the birds and the other one talks about the sky, So I think it should be standardized. I mean, whatever we do, it should be a standard process for everybody. And I think that the planning board should come up with a detailed, what is the criteria that is needed in order for us to approve. That way, when you do, this engineer does it this way, this engineer does it that way, but it should be just, look, these are the steps that we want in order for us to approve us to move forward with the asphalt road.
And that makes number 4 easy, because if there's a criteria,
Correct.
if there's a criteria, then
Exactly.
you can have anybody come in to
Exa-
present. the report.
exactly.
I like that. The criteria is very important.
And it's my understanding that this whole thing is about, they're saying they have to put shingle on a particular house because the structure can't support the weight of tile.
Correct.
So I'm going to guess they're going to say, we need some information about the structure.
Yeah.
The support load, something,
Right,
I don't know,
right,
I'm not an
That
engineer.
should be in the report already.
But it should be a standard,
Yeah.
a standard thing for everybody. So there's no confusion, there's no,
Or people spending all this money to get a report and the board says this doesn't provide. the
yeah, we don't need it. We didn't need that.
It's like, no, it's about,
Yeah,
we needed to see that it can't support.
exactly.
Then they have to go back and do it again. Then we have a really upset home.
Exactly.
Okay. The next discussion item is swale ordinance. Harriet?
Which one?
My apologies. Yes, I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't update your agenda. Yeah, it's the land development item. Essentially, this is more informational. The item has gone to planning. We just weren't able to get it ready for first reading. Alex David also had a conflict today, and so he's not here to show, but I did want to at least get it onto the agenda, even though it was an amendment, and you received it yesterday. So left it as a discussion because I wanted you to at least see it. I don't know if the commission wants to have a full discussion on the item, or, hey, this is really interesting, and kind of leave that for full discussion at the first reading, since we already know where the planning board stays at. But I didn't want it to go without you all having it in front of you at the very least. So it's up to the commission on how detailed you all want to go into this discussion item, but it will be coming back to you as a first reading next month.
Well, I'd be more comfortable having it come back as a first reading after we have a more major discussion about it. And I'd rather have that conversation with Alex here in the room. And I'd love, yeah, I don't want to take it to first reading and have us make changes that may be substantive or just a bunch of them.
So here would be my question, Mr. and Madam Attorneys. The recommendation that comes for the first reading obviously comes with a vote from the planning board. Can the commission make changes on that recommendation between this discussion and the first reading, or do those changes happen after the first reading?
The commission can make the changes whenever they wish. They can
Okay.
have that discussion now, or we can wait till first reading. And there's nothing improper with making the changes after first reading and between first and second reading. And if you want to bring it back even again for the first reading again, that's fine.
I know, we've done that. It always feels kind of sloppy to me, but okay. So what do you guys want to do with this? You want to have the?
I would rather
conversation now, or
have
would you
the-
rather have Alex here? or
Yeah,
what do
I
you-
would rather have Alex here. I don't want to repeat stuff twice.
Okay, because I have some, overall, I'm pretty happy with it, but there's some things in there. The things that I want to discuss with him in the room are kind of substantial.
Sure, and again, the
let's sit on
addendum, yeah, the addendum was sent yesterday, and so with something this big, we wanted to make sure you at least had the opportunity to see it first.
No, I appreciate being able to see it, and I did go through it, but a lot of the questions I had last time are still there, and now some other things came up as well. It was very nicely presented. I like whoever did the highlighted what came from the planning board in yellow. That made it a whole lot easier for me to figure out who was saying what. But I would like to have Alex here. So if you guys, does anyone want to discuss anything, or just push it off to November and have Alex here?
And push it off to Alex. Yeah, we'll wait for Alex.
Okay.
Now, are we gonna?
Last item is swale.
Okay, any discussion on swale? Mario?
So a few months ago, we had various revisions that were done, but I know that the commission was not complete in their discussion of going through the item before you, and I'll refer to the attorneys. I believe this does take care of the landscaping within the right-of-way issue, which the majority ended up coming with to allow, correct?
Yes, the most recent version takes out the landscaping setback requirement.
Okay. So I know that was the main topic a few months ago, but there were a lot of other things that the commission wanted to kind of work through. So I'll leave it up to the commission where they want to go with it. Not sure. Can you please make sure you turn on your mic, sir? Just leave it on.
Sorry. Just a couple questions on some of the stuff that's on here. So 5.3.2, I just have a question on letter D there, where it says sidewalks and bicycle ways shall be placed within the swale. What does that mean? Because bicycle ways are not placed within the swale. They're on the right of way.
I'm not sure that you guys have bicycle paths. So,
We do.
okay, you do. So I wasn't aware of that.
Mhm.
What I was trying to do was clarify within the code right away versus swale, because the terms will kind of use interchangeably throughout.
Yeah.
So I can correct that.
Okay. Yeah, and we don't really have sidewalks either, but I mean, you can
There's
leave
one or
sidewalks.
two.
We do, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay.
One or
one or
two.
two, sorry. All right.
But where
so
do we have bicycle paths, Art?
on Griffin, there's a bicycle path down Griffin Boulevard. I don't know. You got to pass by there every once in a while. So yeah, but we don't have, obviously it's not going to be in the swale. So the other one that I had was F. So parking in the medians is prohibited. No parking shall be allowed in the median open spaces or median parkways. That's unrealistic, in my opinion.
Where are you, Art? I'm sorry.
5.3.2 F. I mean, I understand that's been there. It's there, that the parking in the medians, but the reality is that people park in the medians, right? Especially when you have an event, when you have, I mean, it's there, but it's just not a realistic thing to have, in my opinion.
Don't we have where they can get a permit for parking from in the media now?
So
If they're having a function or.
I
a
don't
lot
know
of
if
companies.
that's the case. I don't know.
We do have.
Okay, well, let's ask Mario.
A special events permit, there's that, but they have to indicate where they're going to put parking. We don't just allow them to park in the median. They'll have to show either work with a church or work over at the rec center or something like that.
But they do.
But people do. And again, it also, almost a year ago now, part of the conversation is if there's no room on the swale, you have vendors and stuff that come in, landscape companies that come in, they're going to be cutting the grass. There's no room on the swale to be able to park.
Exactly.
Then they're going to park in the middle of the street, which is going to shut down the street. And so it is better for them to temporarily park in the median so that traffic can continue to flow, that work and done, because then they're going to leave. Or if Amazon or FedEx is coming, that's more advantageous as opposed to close down the street for whatever amount of time, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour or whatever the case may be. But that's a conversation where at the end of the day, if I remember correctly, the consensus was as it's stated there. So if the commission wants to change that, you guys
Well,
can, but
We have to be respectful of people who have their water meters in the medians. There are many people in our village whose water meters are in the medians, and every time people park in those medians with the water meters
Commissioner, do you mean the swale or the, because the
in the
median,
median.
I don't
Yep.
know of any meters
Yep.
inside the.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. 115th Street, I know. There's a couple other places. Yep, it's in the median.
Really?
It's not on their swale or on their property. It's in the
In the
median.
medium.
You got it. Yep.
That's a first.
No. It's been there.
When I
Forever.
walked my dog, she sometimes likes to dig, and that's what she digged up, and there was one there. I didn't think there was any there, but I've seen them.
I know 115th Street has a lot, and I think there's a couple other streets that have it.
But the parking wouldn't really hurt their meter.
Oh, yes, it does. It breaks the cover of the meter and the dirt falls through and
Most of our meters, Judy, are right in the driveway. People park on my thing all the time on that, so it doesn't do anything.
Okay, so,
we've had issues.
What would you like F to say?
oh, again, the reality is that people are going to park in the medians, and especially when you have large events at people's homes, they're going to park in the medians. So maybe that's a way for us to generate a little revenue. I don't know.
I think what they had now is they had to put up, I believe it was $200, but they got that back if there was no damage.
Oh,
If you were having a party and wanted, X amount of cars, you would pay I think it's $200, but I know they got it back.
when was the last time we did that?
I never did it. I have a parking lot next door to me, thank you. But,
You have an empty lot next to you.
but no, I remember talking
Yeah,
to, that's when I
Yeah, but
found out
the
this was
point is that
$200.
we probably aren't doing it, but okay. All right, so let's move on.
Well, can I make a comment about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're not suggesting any change there?
Well, we can leave it there, but it's just not
Realistic.
reality. It's not,
Enforceable
it's
or
not
enforced.
reality.
Yeah, I get it. No, I
Is-
get
We
that.
have something, we have a rule that we're not going to really do anything about.
Okay, and then here's my other comment on that, tagging onto that. It's just kind of ironic that we say parking in medians is prohibited. Medians are public property,
Mhm.
right? So we're saying you can't park on this public property.
You can park on the other one.
But the swale in front of everybody's house, which is also public property, you can park there.
Yeah.
So it's the irony that you can't park on this public property, which the village has to maintain, right? Our Public Works Department has to maintain it. and You can't park there, but you can park
Park on
on
a
the
swale.
swale
It doesn't make
that the
sense.
property owner
Has to
is
maintain.
required to maintain. So
Yeah,
you
that-
can go park there, destroy it.
Yep.
And the property, that's one of the things in this whole thing that bugs me the most
Yes.
is that you can't park on this public property, but go ahead and park on this one.
All right. I agree, Mac. It's just
So I don't know what
makes
the,
no sense.
Well, if you're going to say that,
and
they
if
can
you're gonna
park on a
make
swale,
it
then it should.
even,
Huh?
then
Sorry.
if you're gonna be uniform about it, it would be no parking on any public right of way.
Correct.
It wouldn't be swale or median, it would be, the term would be right of way, and then that would, I'm not suggesting it, so I can't imagine that would fly. But if you say no parking on the right of way, that would include medians and swales, right, Valerie?
Yes, whatever the commission wants.
But that's what that, if you said right of way, then it would preclude all of that. Now, do we want to go there? I don't, can't imagine, but.
We had that brought up, I think at the last commission meeting, somebody brought that up, that you can't, you can park on the swale, but you can't park on the median. That doesn't make sense. And I agree with you 100%. So we need to have a standard. If you're going to allow people to park on the swale, then they should be able to park on the medium. But we have to enforce, what we have is that there is a permit fee that people have to pay. And I think we should.
I'm not sure that's
Uh,
correct. Mario is
Why couldn't we
shaking his
put-
head no.
Why couldn't we add that there'll be, instead of saying that it's not allowed on the median, have no parking on the median after 9 PM to 8
That's when my
AM,
Party starts.
which would stop people from parking all the time.
I think we'd have to
would
put
be-
signs up then, wouldn't we, Valerie?
You'd have to put signage and you would have to be enforcing it.
Yeah.
We'd have to put signage on every meeting. You couldn't put it one meeting and say, we mean the whole village. You'd do it on every, we'd have sign litter all over the village,
But
sign pollution.
you know that, okay, the town I used to live in Long Island, you couldn't park on the street That's how they did it after midnight, so that you didn't have people parking on these places as a parking spot. It didn't stop deliveries. It didn't stop gardeners because they're not there at 10 o'clock at night or 9 or midnight. I don't care what the hour is, but
But then we'd have to
had-
put signs all over the village. So imagine the village.
would have
full
to
of
have
signs.
signs, really?
Would have a sign that would say no overnight parking.
Couldn't we have just like one at the entrance?
That's what I just asked. No.
Not if you're going to enforce it.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what we want to do about that, guys, but, and then later elsewhere, we're going to discuss, and I didn't mean to kind of take over here, Art, but we're talking about that topic and I wanted to finish it. But elsewhere, we're going to discuss allowing approved parking surfaces on the swales. So now we're saying you can park anywhere on the swale, but you can also approve you can make an actual parking space that is set aside for it, but you could also park on your entire swale. So is there an opportunity here to say, if you want to park on your swale, you have to have an approved space and you can't park on unapproved, you have to park on an approved space only? That would prevent people from parking all over the swales, but then we'd have people who are now parking on swales who would have to put approved parking in.
Well, if you mandate that, then you're going to get a lot of development of the swales. Is that what we want to encourage?
Well, exactly, Judy. And then that's balanced against people are parking on swales and destroying swales anyway, and they look terrible where people park on them all the time and they compact the soil and do all the same terrible things anyway. So at least it would put all the parking in one space as opposed to they're parking all over the swale and using it as their parking. There's a house, I'm not going to say it's a rental property, but they have room. I counted one time. They have room for, I think it's 13 cars on their huge driveway, entire asphalt backyard, and a 4-car garage. And every single vehicle at that property is parked on the swale. They don't, because they use that space for other things. So they're parking on the swale, even though they have all this approved space. So
with the 40%, just say, because we're already saying you can only develop 40%, right?
Yep.
So maybe we just combine that and say, 40% of that can be developed, but you can only take up 40% of the parking as well. I don't know.
say that again.
So we can develop 40% of the swale, right?
For parking.
For parking.
Yeah.
But maybe what we say is you're only allowed to park and utilize 40%, whether it's developed or not developed.
How then that 40% could change. I could be parked out there and taking up the 40% with my big car, run to Publix and come
Yeah.
back and park in a different space on my swale. And it's only 40%, but now it's a different 40% and we still have a swale that's being destroyed.
Well, realistically, it's going to be very difficult to enforce anyway.
I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't have any cars parked along our streets.
Oh, I'm with you there.
Yeah, it would just, you have to have we do have a code that says you have to have a driveway and you have to have ample driveway. And
But we have
provide for a lot.
But we still have time. People still have time to finish that project. What is it until, when do they have until?
January.
Till January, right?
Well, they don't have to finish the project ever,
Well,
but
they don't.
January, we're gonna, yeah.
Right. They don't have to finish it, but we've given them until January to finalize that project. So in theory, they will have everybody will have a driveway and everybody will have a certain amount of parking on their property, but maybe they don't currently, right? So,
Well, let's kind of project to January 3rd and they do, or they should. But yeah, you're right.
But yeah,
So
in
we
an
wanna
ideal
go there?
scenario, I would love I don't think, I would love no vehicles parked on the swale, period.
Well, look, and the other part of that conversation is we talked about it when we talked about the plants out along the street. If anything's, really truly prohibits someone getting off the street, it's an SUV parked along the side of the road or at some
Or
property.
13 cars.
Or they're butt to nose the whole way down the swale, sometimes more than one property in a row. So then you really can't get off the road.
Yeah.
And if you were to trip and fall and hit one of those things. So I don't know, guys, what do you want to do about this?
Is there any other discussion on that?
I think we need to think about that one.
I'm still coming back to the part that you're saying about the swale and the medium. We still haven't fixed that. We have to fix that because if we're saying people can park on a swale, they should be able to park on a medium. We need to deal with that.
I think if we leave it open for people can park on the medians are going to turn into parking lots.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I agree.
And they'll be destroyed. And when
If
there's not a car there, they'll be
if
terrible.
you want to change it, I think I would rather just leave it where it is. I know we're not enforcing it unless there's damage done to the medians, but I don't have a problem with that. I would prefer people not get the A-OK to park all over the medians.
Yeah, I'm fine with F staying the way it is.
I don't think we have much.
I don't think we have a whole lot of choice.
Are we doing that permit? What
I
we-
know for sure we talked about a permit because I do remember too, when you have a party, you have to put up a permit. You have to pay.
Yeah.
I do remember that
still in there?
$200.
That's only for special events. So if you can
no,
still have a
something
gathering, you can still have a gathering. I mean, unless the village is saying, you can't come to my house. I've got 3 kids. If they're older and they've got families, sorry, you can't come visit me because I don't have enough parking for you guys and have dinner with me.
We're not
I
saying
don't
that.
think that's where the commission wants to
No,
go.
I'm not, I'm
You
saying.
don't need to have a special event permit just because people come to your house.
But they,
Now, if you have a blowout party that you know you're going to invite 100 people, then yeah, we're asking you to get a special event permit. But even then, it's not like it is mandatory that they get the special event permit.
no, but the fee that they would charge was to replace any damage. So they get the fee back at the end of their event.
Right, they-
Correct, but
They got their $200 back.
correct, but that doesn't prevent people from coming over. It's only for a special event. Those are far and few between what we get in the village.
Right.
And so if we're hoping to use a special event permit to prevent that type of parking, that you're not accomplishing the goal.
So we leave it alone.
You're going to have something there that you're not going to be enforcing.
That's fine. I'd rather have something there that we're not going to be enforcing than invite people to use our medians as a parking lot.
I agree with that.
Right.
All right, shall we move on?
What else?
We've been
What's
stuck
next?
on that for a while. So shall we move on? So.
Absolutely.
So 5.3.4, C, the thing about mailboxes are prohibited now. Obviously, we're going to be grandfathering in the current mailboxes that are there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I had heard something about along the lines that the United States Post Office had override in where they can be placed or whatever. Is that not the case? Do we know?
I do not know.
Okay.
So the postal service, they have standards for where a mailbox can be placed
Huh?
and what is needed. Those standards become very common, but only when there is a sidewalk and curb present.
Okay.
Our community, we do not have that. So their standards for our community would be reach out to your postmaster and he'll give you whatever standards they have. And we have not been able to make any contact with the postmaster.
Why? What happened? He doesn't like you?
Maybe. Maybe.
All right. And then the last one that I have is,
Can I jump in on that topic?
yeah, sure,
before you
go-
go by? I mean, do you mind if I?
oh, not at all.
I have questions about it. as well.
Yeah.
So why do we want to prohibit mailboxes in swales?
So the technical answer, Mac, is because it's an affixed object that in case, this is what I understood, in case of an emergency, that an emergency vehicle needs to go through a swale to get through a swale, it could probably go through, ferns, but a concrete affixed object on the swale, obviously they're gonna crash their vehicle.
What about a tree, an oak tree that's 3 feet wide
Yeah. Exactly.
and light poles that are right at the edge as well?
Well, that's what I had understood the reasoning for it. I'm not saying it's a right reason or
Yeah,
a wrong
no, no.
reason. I'm just saying that that's the reason that I understood why not.
I personally don't have a problem with them. As a matter of fact, if there was some,
Not to mention the mail guy stopping in the middle of the street to deliver mail instead of pulling into and blocking traffic instead of pulling into the, into the property like they do in
Median.
my house. Oh, they pull into my house into the roundabout and drop the mail in my front door.
I mean, when I see them
No,
pull
they
over,
block our street.
yeah,
They
pull
block
over
our
and-
street.
I mean, block, you mean when they're delivering at a mailbox in the swale?
I guess,
They
yeah.
reach out the window and do
No,
it. I think.
no
it's-
matter where they're delivering, they block the street. on
Oh,
our
sure.
street.
and it- Right. So when
Not
when
my
he
house.
delivers my mail, he parks out in the street. He doesn't pull in my driveway. He parks on the street and he does a couple of houses and you're right. He's sitting there blocking it. So it has nothing, he's blocking the street when he's delivering in a mailbox that's not in the swale.
Yeah, I
He's
guess.
also blocking the street when he's delivering in a mailbox that is in the swale.
Yeah, I guess and aesthetically though, right? We would also have to really, if we were going to allow something like this to happen, we would have to really get into the detail of aesthetics because I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen some really funky mailbox,
And we have, look, we have a lot of them now.
Yeah.
So then we're going to be in this thing, we're in this awkward situation where we say no mailboxes and swales, but we're going to grandfather in all the ones that are out there. And there's a lot. And you're right, there's some funky looking ones.
Really funky.
And there's some that don't look very secure. I'm surprised the mailman even delivers to them. But so are we really solving a problem by saying that, or should we, since there are so many anyway, should we allow them and have code that addresses what they look like? I think there's something charming about mailboxes along the street, quite frankly, when you're in a community and you see mailboxes out, no, not the Dolphins, or my favorite one is up here in North Miami. Somebody has a full-size horse
Yes.
on its back legs with its front legs holding up the mailbox. I kid you not. So no offense, Matt, if that person's listening to this meeting, but there's something charming about mailboxes lining a village street. And I think the post office prefers it, quite frankly, because I've never seen all the official post office language about this, but I was told by someone who claims they know that the post office wants everyone to go in that direction. It makes for a more efficient mail service, blah, blah, blah. And that, as a matter of fact, if you have one out in the swale, you're not allowed to put it back on your house if you want to, because once it's out there, then it's required to stay there. That's what I've heard.
No, that happens to be true.
Yeah.
With the mailbox on,
I could not change my
Totally true.
mailbox
with,
at the house
yeah,
because it was,
with,
Yeah, so this whole notion of not allowing mailboxes in the swale, I'm just not sure why.
we can make it where the condition of the mailbox is very, a mailbox in a swale to me is not a problem. It's the condition of the mailbox. It's,
It's like anything else. There's
Yeah.
a code you have
Right.
to meet, and then you have to
meet it.
maintain.
the mailboxes. Why did this come up? What was going on that?
I never understood what I
There
can.
were residents who were brought before the code board because their mailbox was in the swale, and that was a point of discussion that then made it that.
And then you couldn't point to it in the code. There was nothing in our code, right?
Correct, and
Yeah.
the commission asked me to see what the U.S. Postal Service requires for mailboxes, and again, it's when there's no sidewalk or curbs, their standard is talk to your postmaster, which we can't get a hold of.
Well, when you don't get a hold of him next time, ask him if we're allowed to.
Will do.
Write code that
I might ask Shantae to start picking up that, see if they'll pick up her phone call.
call from herself.
I think it's weird that we're going to grandfather all these mailboxes in, but
And then
yet
tell the other
somebody
ones.
else
No, I think
next
it's
door
unfair.
that doesn't have it, that wants to change it,
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
I think
It
it's,
just
I
doesn't
think
make
it's wrong.
sense.
It doesn't make sense at all.
But I would like to see some code about what the mailboxes look like and how they're supported. And they should have to get permitted, I would think, because it's I don't know if it's a structure. I'm probably using the wrong word, Art, but you were on P and Z. I mean, I would like to know that they're installed in the ground properly.
Obviously.
Yeah, so I'd like to see it actually allowed and code written about how they're installed, what they can look like, how big they can they be mounted on a wall? Do they have to be on a post? How big does the post have to be? I mean, just kind of
So that means that
Get a
you don't-
code written about it.
that means you don't like the dolphin on the mailbox.
We'd have to wait and see what the
And the
planning
horse.
board recommends to us.
My mailbox is just on a windowsill right by the door, and it's always been there.
So where are we going with this one, guys? Art, you brought this one up.
Listen, I'm fine with allowing mailboxes as long as, we get, we have to be careful, what exactly we allow. I don't want some mausoleum out there looking thing where, that's gonna look horrific. So we have to be careful. Other than that, I don't care if they put a.
But to me, the condition of the mailbox has to be secure.
And
Yeah,
I
no.
think we need to leave some of this up to the
P and Z.
planning and zoning or
No.
whatever their new committee is.
Could it be that if anybody that's going to put in something different other than the standard mailbox, they have to go before code?
Yeah, but what's a standard mailbox?
I know. I don't know what the standard is. I don't know.
Little thing with a
There's
little red flag?
I think that it's not the mailbox that you guys are
The
actually
support.
questioning. It's the support structure because the mailboxes are standard. You can go to Walmart, buy a standard mailbox. It's, it's this type of shape and it's X amount of square
How
feet
secure
with
it is.
inside. So I think what you're actually getting to is what is the support structure for that mailbox.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. Yeah, but I've seen mailboxes that look like guns. I've seen they have everything. So you gotta be careful what you allow.
So do we agree we're gonna remove the language about no mailboxes and look into writing a code for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. Yes.
Judy, you're good with that?
I'm good.
Fine.
Yeah.
Art,
Yes, sir.
your next item?
No, I'm good. That's it.
Oh, I haven't even gotten started, Jenny.
Haven't started yet?
No, Art went first. Dan has nothing.
No,
You want to go next?
we tackled the mailbox. That was one of my biggest concerns.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner Kennedy.
Okay. Good Lord.
Might I remind you that you are leaving shortly
Yes, I am.
for the airport?
You're right, I am.
Continue.
A little bleary-eyed. Okay, so we're going to right back to the top under definitions. So this is just interesting for everyone to read. Swale, the area immediately adjacent to a roadway between the driving surface of the roadway and the adjacent private property line. Just to remind you guys, every time we use the word swale throughout this whole thing, that's the definition. It's the roadway to the property line, moving towards the house. And we have them of varying depths. So when we decide this can't be in a swale because we don't want that out in a swale, just realize that it could be in a certain number of feet on one property and allowed and disallowed on another. So you could have, I'll just use mailbox as an example. Mailbox, if we said they weren't allowed to be in the swale and that swale were only 3 feet deep, that means at the 3-foot line, that house could have a mailbox. But a house with a much deeper swale, an 18-foot swale, would have to put their mailbox back 18 feet. So just keep that in mind when we talk about all these things. It's not uniform in Biscayne Park. It's not a uniform depth. So something that you wouldn't allow and something that you don't allow to be in the swale could be out there really much closer to the street in one property and way farther back in another. And it's not ambiguous because it's actual hard line, but it's really kind of peculiar as we talk through some of these things. So remember, don't picture swale in your head as one uniform depth because some are very shallow and some are very, very deep. We have one on 10th Avenue. I think some of the swales are like 2 feet, maybe 2.5 feet or something. I mean, they're really shallow. So if you said something can't be in the swale at those properties, it would be right there.
Why is that? Because
That's how the village is designed.
But is that because of it was determined by somebody that evaluated the property, or is that because they put a hedge way up in the front and now?
No, that's how the land's platted. Platted or plotted?
The road.
Platted. That's how the land's platted.
Really?
That's the legal, yeah, like, Art, I think your swale is really deep. The swales on Griffin, I think, are exceptionally deep.
No, not really. I mean, they're like 7 or 8 feet.
Okay, then I'm wrong
There,
about that.
there are,
But-
there are properties that have 15 and
Yeah.
20-foot swales.
Yeah, Mario's saying, Judy, on the north side on Griffin, they're really deep. On your side, they're not as deep.
Okay.
But on 10th Avenue, Judy, right at your corner at 10th Avenue, I think that swale there is very shallow. I think it's
Shallow.
less than 3 feet. Yeah, if you go up on, pull properties up online and you'll see how narrow how shallow some of these swales are. So I bring that up. Okay. Goodness, which ones do I want to jump in here? This is probably a question for Valerie. 5.3.2 C as in Charlie, all vehicles have to have a current license plate. Is that the extent of what is would normally be required for a parked car? Do they have to be registered as well?
This was existing language in your code, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure what you're referring to.
So,
It says you have to have the cars parked anywhere have to have a current license plate. Cars parked anywhere in any street, alley, swale, other public right of way have to have a current license plate. License plate is one thing, registration, I'm sorry, license plate is one thing, registration is another. Do we
No,
require?
they're the same.
It's the
Plate,
same.
plate comes with registration. They're exactly the same.
But you get the new tags every year when I
but it
update
says,
the
it says current. It says current license plate.
So the word current makes it
Yeah.
okay?
The current.
Usually just says current registration, not current license plate.
Well,
you
but
can't-
you
you can't see
don't
the
know what the
registration.
registration is, but you know what the plate is.
You can't see the registration driving by, but you can see the license plate. And it's, as long as it's current,
So current means
up to date,
if the registration is current on there, then the license plate is.
obviously. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make clear that it really meant that. Okay, very good. D as in dog. Says sidewalks and bicycle ways shall be placed within the swale.
We already talked about that.
We're
Uh,
gonna change that so that it's right of way.
Okay. So we'll say right of way, but it implies that someone could install one. Says it will say sidewalks and bicycle ways shall be placed within the right of way. It implies that I could put one out there in the right of way.
Well, that's what it said before, and we changed it, I guess, to swale, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
So we're gonna change it back.
We're gonna
But to
change it
Mac's
back to right of
point,
way.
a resident can't put a bicycle path on the right of way, actually can't do anything on the right of way. So why would we even have that?
Yeah, so why is it there? When I read that, I'm like, I would think, oh, I can put a sidewalk out there.
Or I can put a bicycle path
Put a bicycle
in
path
front of my house.
Just ride back and forth. So it's just odd when I read that. It's like, why is that there? Because we wouldn't let someone put a sidewalk in anyway.
Mm. Yeah.
Say again, Ed? Oh, so should we just strike that altogether?
I think so.
Well, it doesn't really apply because you can't do it. So why have it?
Okay.
Fine.
Just want a clarification on that. Okay, and then E is the big one. We kind of danced around this. The parking of a motor vehicle in the swale adjacent to a private property is permitted, provided that it's parallel to and adjacent to the street, completely off the pavement when it's parked, except that trucks and RVs cannot be there. So this allows cars to be parked on grass swales. So if we're going to allow that, guys, we're not going to solve this here right now. What do we do about this? I mean,
Oh, sorry. Repeat that again.
it's E where it says cars are allowed to be parked in the swales as long as they're, and it's specific, they have to be parallel and off the street. So that's good, right? But then the whole approved parking, I mean, do we,
Yeah, but the hard thing, Mac, and you know this is you just said it a little while ago, all the swales are different. So, you can have a swale that's, who knows how long.
Right.
And then you can have a small swale.
Right.
So
And-
how
and-
are you going to control?
I don't know.
I don't see how you can even do that unless you prohibit parking on the swale, period.
Yeah.
Then you don't have a problem.
And how does code or the police know that that car is parked in the swale when that car in fact could be parked in the grass, but half of it's in private property?
Exactly.
It's just a mess.
It is.
Okay.
So we should have sidewalks.
So just put in sidewalks everywhere so people can't park there. Okay, 5.3.4. This is an odd one to me. This is the concrete things that people put out there so people don't park on their swale.
I thought there was a thing that said we couldn't do that anyway.
It says right here you can.
The domes
says-
can, you
It
can-
says dome type markers may be placed within dedicated swales, provided that they're not closer. So there's a spacing requirement.
That's a Dade County standard.
Actually, I spoke with Valerie about this, Judy, and she informed me that the dome type markers, it's not limited to dome type markers, that Miami-Dade County does allow pyramid markers in swales. So we say dome type markers only, and I'm not sure why. Look, here's the bottom line. If the argument's going to be someone could fall and hit their head on a pyramid, the pointed one, and hurt themselves. If you fall and hit your head on a concrete dome, you're hurt. If you fall and hit your head on the asphalt road surface, you're hurt. If you fall and smack your head into the rearview mirror sticking out of that RV or the bumper of that car, your head's hurt. So I'm not sure why
your tire is going to be affected more by the
that's the person's problem who's driving off the road.
The dome.
Maybe they won't drive off the road anymore. So I don't understand why we say dome type markers, but we don't allow the pyramid. And then at that point, if we're allowing people to put concrete things out there, then what's the difference between a rock and a concrete? A hard thing is a hard thing, and a road's a hard thing, and a car that's parked in the swale is the hard thing. When we got rid of that 5-foot thing, 8 feet, whatever it is, I forget what it was now. Five.
Then
when
we
got rid-
talked to,
when we got rid of that, that was only related to plants. So that whole conversation was about plants. It wasn't about anything else. So now there's the everything else conversation that we need to have. So we said plants can stay out there. Mario wants to say something.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think of with regards to, and it just comes to mind with the pyramid, is you probably have a higher chance where someone is driving, goes over it, the tires blow, lose control of the vehicle, and then could drive into someone's home or greater damage. Where with the dome shape, yes, they may still hit the dome shape, but less chance of it blowing a tire because you don't have that point towards the top. So just to put that out there,
It's a maybe.
it's a maybe,
We don't
but
know.
it's
But the
probably
county-
a bigger
The county
maybe.
allows them. So I would,
Correct. But just to throw that out there, whether you want to keep it or not, it's just
so this,
something to think of.
so it leads into the conversation about all the other things. If we're going to allow hard concrete things to be put out there, what's the difference between a dome shaped one, a pointed one, a landscape rock? We have people who have done beautiful gardens with with plant material and hardscape all together.
And if you're gonna,
And then people have the reflector poles
can't-
and they put them there because people drive over their yard and destroy their yard.
I think we
Yeah,
have
I know.
a rule against the reflector poles.
Right, so I'm bringing up the topic of all these things out there. So why do we allow one thing and not other things, and some things that are actually attractive and other things that are not? And it just brings it brings up the general conversation of when we eliminated that 5-foot plant rule, that was plants only. But now we have to decide, are we going to say no to all the other things out there? Or are we going to say they're okay too? And remember, we allow these, well, no, that's the paragraph, but I'm bringing up now, it brings up this whole topic of elsewhere, it says no reflector sticks. It says no other things out there elsewhere in here. I'm just use this as to launch the conversation. But you're going to allow one thing, but not the other things. And some of these things are to protect people's property. Some of them are decorative. But we're going to allow cars to park there. And then you always have to go back to that too in your head, right? Say, okay, we're going to allow this, but not this. But you can park your SUV there. And as a matter of fact, you can put them butt to nose the whole length of your swale. It looks terrible. No one can get off the road. It's dangerous. But we're going to allow that.
So
If we're going to, I'm sorry, if we're going to allow that, why are we not allowing all these other things?
the reason people put these things on there is because they don't want people parking on their swale, right?
I'm going to guess some people do it for that reason. Some
Yeah,
people do it for
that's pretty,
aesthetic reasons.
no, I think it's,
They also do it on the corners to keep the trucks from trying to drive over their property to keep
Are
them
you
off.
talking rocks or reflector sticks?
no, I'm talking about, I'm talking about the domes.
Domes.
So, some people like plants, right? Some people don't want people parking on their swales. Some people are okay with people parking on their swales. I guess it's just it's just a personal decision on what, you want. So I personally wouldn't want to take that away from people.
Take what away?
Take away the fact that they can protect their swales, semi-protect their swales by,
I'm not suggesting taking it out. I'm saying if that's in there, why not these other things? And cars can be there too.
yeah, but again, I think that the majority of the people that put those domes there is because they don't want cars parked there, and that's why they put them there initially. So, I don't think parking is the issue for them.
I'm
I
not
think,
sure if it's about, they don't want people to park there as much as, hey, this is the edge of the road, be careful, don't run in my grass. I don't think it's about parking. It's about, don't take out my corner, don't take out my edge of my.
but if you put domes around your swale, obviously you're not gonna let, people, what are they gonna, people go run over them in order to park on your swale?
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't think so. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
One of my neighbors has them the whole length all around and yeah, people do.
People park on the swale?
Yeah, you can drive right over them. They're not any, I don't think they prohibit people from parking. I think they're more to show this is the edge of the road and don't drive here
Yeah,
because we don't have curbs and sidewalks.
yeah.
I think it's a marker, not don't park here as much. Not as much don't park here because you certainly can drive over those dome things. Now, if you want them, if the intent is to show people, I don't want you to park here, then the pyramids would do that more because they look like more of an actual obstacle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if that's the intent, then all the more reason to allow the pyramid shaped ones because then it really says, don't park here. You're going to bang up your tire, although you're really not going to. You can drive right over those things.
Yeah. So
So the point here is that we are specific that dome-shaped markers are allowed, and that means the other ones are not. And
that was in the existing code. That's been.
yeah, I know, but we're addressing this whole code. Right, but we're addressing the whole thing. So we've got to look at all of it. We're here, right?
The reflectors should be allowed to be in
And
it.
then there's reflectors, and then there's also landscaping rocks and whatever else people put out there. So as far as I'm concerned, if people want to do decorative things out there, I'm fine with it. And if people want to protect their property with pointed domes or rounded domes or reflector sticks, I mean, it's not, do we like them out there? No, but you know what else doesn't look good? When a corner is just destroyed, and we have some corners that are destroyed. And people spend a lot of time and money out there repairing them all the time because they're constantly taken out. And it's not just, it's everyday traffic. It's not just big trucks. It's,
If I were to guess why this was there from the get-go and not all of these other things, Mac, is because I think that they wanted a sense of, to have some sense of control and not just let people do whatever the hell they want all over the place and put rocks and big giant balls. I've seen those, by the way. So I think that, they wanted to allow people to have some control of their swale, but not just make it a free for all. And I don't think it's a good idea to allow this become a free for all and just do whatever you want and put stakes and reflectors and what's next. I mean, I don't think that that's a good idea.
And you should not allow any of it.
Okay, so take it out.
Saying if you're not going to allow one thing, then you need to take it, have a standard thing and have none.
I don't think so. I think you
I
can
don't
be
think you can- I don't-
specific.
I think it's just fine the way it is, me personally.
I think you can be specific.
What does that mean specific? What do you mean?
I think you can be specific by allowing one or two things and not allowing everything.
Okay, yeah, well, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
I have no
That's wh-
problem with
that's-
that.
That's why it's there now, and there's one thing.
So what's the big thing about the reflectors?
Well, they look terrible, but I don't think people put them out there because they think they look nice. They put them out there because their yard looks terrible when it gets destroyed and they have to pay to repair it. And they could be cited for that. I don't know that we're actually out there citing people for that, but so it's not an aesthetic choice people are making. We're having the yards destroyed or for the reflector sticks. No, I meant if they're not there and their yard gets destroyed. So it's not an aesthetic choice. They're doing it to solve a problem. My corner is getting destroyed, not mine. I'm speaking as well, two of them are in the room right now listening to us have this conversation. Two of their corners get destroyed and they want to put reflector sticks out there, and I don't blame them because they go out there and resod. And it's not just, oh, the grass is dead, go throw some squares of sod down. No, it's these big muddy ruts get worn through, and you've got to come out there and shovel dirt back onto it, get it all even back up, then try to sod it and get sod to take while people are driving over it. So I get why people want to do it, and we're a community without curbs. And here's the other ironic thing. Where we do have speed humps, we don't have very many, but where we do have them, and in some other places throughout the village, we install those horribly ugly, this is you pre-Mario, so I'm not blaming you on this. I'm not blaming this on you. No, those yellow sticks, those yellow candlestick things, and they're screwed. So talk about kind of a hazard. It's something that's actually bolted to the road surface, right? So now it's a tripping hazard. And this horrible, ugly yellow plastic thing that sticks up about this tall. You've seen them, Art, right? Okay. They're called ugly. They're called really, really, really ugly. And they're all beat up and banged up. And the one across the street from me, I go out there about once a week and I pick it up and I put it back, I reattach it. But the village is doing that. The village is installing those for what purpose? I'm not sure what purpose they really serve, but they're there. But we don't allow someone to put a reflector stake on the city-owned property that they're required to maintain with their own time and money. To me, it's just kind of crazy.
I think the speed bump should be a different color, and we don't need the poles.
I know it's probably expensive, but Avonshaw has the speed bumps that are pretty good. They're like white lines that are right in the middle of
Yeah.
Avonshaw, and it does the same thing as the big gigantic,
So again, there's another example of it's just really inconsistent and kind of peculiar that the village would be allowed to do that on the road surface and a resident could not. And you can't put stakes out there to protect the grass that people are destroying that you've got to maintain. Do we want them there? No, nobody wants reflector stakes around the community, but we're a community with no curbs. A curb in many communities, it's the curb that makes the truck make a wider turn, and every car make a wider turn. Without the curb, it's just go for it. Take the corner out. And then as soon as it looks like a crappy corner, then everyone just goes over it. It gets worse and worse and worse. That's why I say we need to back off on some of this stuff. Now, here's the other thing. We're going to grandfather in whatever's out there now, right? There's going to be a grandfather clause in here. It's in there, right? So we're going to grandfather in all these things that are out there now, but then starting today, we're going to say you can't do it. There's a grandfather section that says swale stuff is grandfathered in.
Yeah, but what's actually legal, not what's illegal.
Well, Grant, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, if it's illegal now, it's still going to be illegal. after.
That's what grandfathering is. Grandfathering is allowing something that's not allowed because it's already there.
no,
Then what
it's
is?
not legal by our code. That's right.
Correct.
If the code says that you can't do this, that's not going to be grandfathered.
But
in.
if they have the little reflector things, it's still going to be wrong after we move this forward, right? Yeah,
Let's
so
remove that.
there's no
I think
grandfathering
we
in
need to
that.
Back off on this stuff in the swales. It's just really silly. We're allowing cars to be parked on swales. Cars, the whole width of a property, from that property line to that property line, line it up with cars, SUVs, right out to the edge. We're not even saying there's a certain amount of clearance that you have to provide off of the street. We're simply saying, go out there and park cars, butt to nose, the entire length of your property. That's the ugliest thing we can allow. It's the most dangerous thing we can allow for pedestrians. And it's it's the worst. So that we're allowing, but we're not going to allow reflector sticks that are protecting someone's property. We're not going to allow landscape rocks that are part of a beautiful landscape design. We're not going to allow a pointed dome because we want rounded domes. It's just absurd. It really, really is. If you think about that, think about it. That property over there with all cars lined up along it is allowed. But that one over there with a beautiful garden, some landscape rocks and a reflector thing to protect the corner is not allowed. It's nuts. If we were in a community that said no parking on swales, and we want this to all be really nice and beautiful, and it has to all be just like done up right, that would be one thing. But we're not. We're starting off by saying you can park cars out there with no limit, except you can't have a commercial vehicle with a sign on it or however that's written. But no limit on the number of cars, how crappy they look. You could have a hoopty out there. I got one on my block that had torpedoes on it for a couple of weeks. Everyone see that? That's allowed. A broke down old pickup truck with two gigantic fake torpedoes on the top sitting there is allowed to sit on the swale in Biscayne Park, but a landscape rock and a reflector stick and a pointed dome cannot. Someone make logic out of that for me. Go. Then why are we doing it? Then
So-
why do we keep this in our code?
So the current code as it's written, it's very specific on what, not only what is allowed, but also the distance from the edge of the paved road, the distance between the markers. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is let people do whatever they want on their swale as far as whatever they want, and whether it's a stick, whether it's 20,000 rocks, big rocks, little rocks. Is that what you're saying? Let people do whatever they want on the swale?
What I'm saying is
Because that doesn't make sense to me.
okay, but what else doesn't make sense? The
What doesn't make
car
sense?
scenario.
I understand, but okay, but we're going always back to the car scenario, and I get the car
It's
scenario.
all of one conversation. It's stuff in the swale.
Okay, but let's.
Car,
let's-
a
let's
rock, a
just
stake.
Focus, okay, but let's just focus on the aesthetics. That's what I want to concentrate on. Just let's look at the aesthetics piece, right? So if we take this out and say, okay, listen, the swale is yours to do as you want, pretty much, right? Right now, it's very specific what you can do. It's got to be from this side of the edge, 24 inches apart, blah, 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 blah.
For the domes, you mean?
Yeah, for the domes, right. I mean, there's nothing else here that you can put. So what you're saying is you're going to give people a green light to pretty much do whatever they want to try and, right or wrong, to try to protect their swale, to enhance, whatever they feel is aesthetically pleasing, which may be to you, but it's maybe not to me, whatever. That's very concerning to me, to allow people just, listen, green light, do whatever you want. Next thing you know, you might be going down the road and you see, just big giant boulders in people's, and not pretty boulders. I'm talking about, boulders, right? They could do that. If we're going to take away this, then I'm concerned. And obviously it's not going to be everybody. It's not, because I'm not dumb. I mean, people are not going to do stupid things and make their houses look ugly intentionally. But there are going to be some that are going to be like, oh, really? I'm going to put this and I'm going to do that. And, it's a slippery slope in my
I
opinion.
completely agree with
That's all
you.
I'm
Wait
saying.
a second, though.
Completely agree.
Who owns the swale?
The city,
County.
the city.
No, the city.
City.
Yeah.
Now, why do we have swales? Can we go back to that? Is it for fire trucks? Is it for emergency vehicles? Why do we have swales?
Well, I think the first reason is for drainage, right? I think that's probably the
One of-
premier reasons is
You
for
think it's
drainage.
really for drainage? Then
Yeah.
No, it's also for utilities.
Yeah,
Utilities.
Utilities.
And now that Florida Power and Light is burying some of our electrical things, it's not going to be on private property. It's going to be in the swale.
Right, and they go right underneath it. They did mine, and they went right underneath my entire Nothing, not a leaf wiggled on a plant when they did
So
it.
I don't
Yeah,
necessarily.
but they put a box on the property.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right, but
So I-
that's, what I'm saying is, let's go back to the beginning. Why? What's it for? Okay, it's for utilities.
Yeah, but we're allowed, but then you have to go back to the parking thing, right? My argument is not about parking at this point. I'm just talking about an aesthetic argument, okay?
Yeah.
But then in your scenario, then we have to go back to the parking, because if we are allowing parking on swales, right? Then emergency vehicles can't get through there, right?
That's
So,
true.
right, so then we'd have to go back, but what Mac and I are discussing here is not so much the parking, it's more of, allowing people the green
How do
light.
we allow cars, but we don't allow stakes? I mean, it really doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so that's my point, Mac. That's the only concern that I have.
You don't want a free for all. I completely get it and I
That's the
respect
only
that.
concern.
Then how do we accomplish that?
Well, like I said, right now, there's very specific language in here on what you can do with these domes, right? Whether it's domes or, pyramids or whatever. But then you lose control if you say, okay, we're going to take that away. And you can put, the little reflectors, and you can put stones, and you can, what are you going to do? Are you going to use the same measurements? Are you going to say the rock can only be this size? The reflectors have to be at this distance. I mean, it's just,
I know.
it's concerning.
I get it. And we have hundreds of properties that are in violation now of D as in dog, other objects prohibited. I mean, hundreds of properties in violation. And if we don't grandfather them in, oh my God, then the code's gonna have to go out and tell people to remove all this stuff.
But that they're in violation of code. It's already there. That code says they get.
And the
That's-
village allowed it.
That is the
for-
resident's responsibility.
And the village allowed it for decades. And some of them were put in when driveways were put in.
But this is just one more thing that we're not enforcing.
You know? Look, Art, I understand what you're saying about it could be a free-for-all. But the irony of the cars and not these other things is just beyond me. I'd rather have addressed that than, and kind of have the take on the free-for-all.
Just to add something to the conversation, not to lead one way or the other. Remember that the swale, which is part of the right of way, should a need for utility project or anything comes in, whatever's there is going to be taken out.
Yeah, exactly.
And most times might not be able to be replaced within kind.
Yep.
And so, if and when the county ever decides to actually go and move forward with septic to sewer, you're going to have a trench that is essentially from close to property line to close to property line, 25 feet deep. And so when they come in, you can have all this decorative stuff there. It's going to be
Gonna go.
gone.
Yeah.
The contractor and the county and whoever the project is being done is not going to replace a 3-foot boulder, or several boulders or anything. You can either move it out of your swale or it's gonna be junked.
Going with us.
And so there's, just to put that out there as well, there's smaller projects like when they do the undergrounding and it's boring, which is just drilling a hole into the ground and letting it go horizontal. That won't really impact a lot of things, but there could be instances where whatever's there is going to move, whether it's a tree, whether it's something decorative, whether it's, whatever, it doesn't matter.
That's a whole gigantic conversation for another
Could be
day when it
something,
happens.
but
And it could
just-
be
just a
in 10
caveat.
years or 100 years or never. So,
Exactly, but just a
So-
caveat.
so I don't know where to go with this, guys, but I understand what you're saying. I do. And I don't disagree with you at all. But people make,
Discuss the vehicle situation. We can discuss that.
about prohibiting them.
Not necessarily prohibiting. I don't know.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, if you can get closer to the mics because no one can hear you.
Not necessarily prohibiting them because, you'll have people with pitchforks and torches here. But but maybe trying to figure out a way to make them less, or depending on the size of, or the length of the swale, if we come up with some kind of, equation where we say, okay, if you have 100 feet, you're allowed to have, I don't know. I
I
don't
think the
know.
only way you could do that is saying you can park on the swale, but only on an approved parking surface that can't be more than 40% of the area of the swale.
Yeah, but
I think
then,
that's-
but then you're forcing people
And you're forcing people to do that, and I don't
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's going to fly either.
exactly.
So I think I understand what you're saying, and I think the only way to make it a reasonable thing is to do it that way. But we're not going to do that.
Yeah, well, not after we making them,
40% here and then the next day they go 40% the other way.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think we should allow people to put these things out in there right away. If it became such a ridiculous, horrible thing, we could change the code again. I can't imagine it really would. I think the first thing you'd see is more of these reflector stakes come back up for people whose corners are coming out. Yeah, and people put the pointy domes up, hoping that it might make people not park there or drive over their grass.
Is it less cost?
The other thing that you see is cars that can't pass on the narrow streets, they'll just pull up in someone's yard to go around them. You'll be coming in the car coming towards you, and people will just kind of drive halfway in the grass to get
They
past the
still do.
oncoming car. Yeah,
They
exactly.
still do.
Yep.
But I think if you allow people to put things out and then you tell them later they have to remove it, again, they're going to be what they were a couple meetings ago and come at us with pitchforks. So I think it's not been allowed per se. And I think it's okay to leave it not allowed per se. I mean, we get upset about the visual, what do they call it? The visual clutter of the signs and stuff. It is visual clutter if you're putting up reflector poles.
Yep.
So anyways, since all this is going to P and Z anyways, I mean, I think there's only so much we should put in our time and move on.
PNZ's gonna ask for a raise.
I know. You got that right.
I have some other questions here. We don't have very much time left. Or do you guys
Will triple their salary.
Yeah. Quadruple it, what the hell? Do we want to
Running
do this
close to
more?
three
Do we want
witching
to,
hours, so
do we want to do this more, or do we want to pick up where we left off? Because I have a ton more notes about things. I went through this whole thing and read it, so.
You got about 10 minutes if that's what you want to do. Or shall we?
I hope the rest isn't as complicated as this last.
Yeah, some of them might be. Do you want to press pause on this and pick up in November?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, Judy?
Fine by
Okay.
me.
Okay, motion to adjourn? Oh, no, you have other
Motion.
stuff to do. I'm sorry. No. Can't
What do
do
we
that.
want to put on for the next meeting agenda? Anything?
This.
That's a bad question, right?
Land Development Code.
Building permit stuff needs to come back.
Okay, he's got all that stuff, right? Okay. Any announcements? I would just like to wish all our Jewish residents an easy fast and hopefully a happy holiday. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn, Jenny?
Second it.
I make a motion to
Made
adjourn.
by Commissioner Hammelberg,
A
seconded
Second by
by
Commissioner Samaras.
Commissioner Samaria. Have a very pleasant evening.
Right.
Good night.